Hey, my fellow Westorians. It is Saturday. It is predictions day. We've only got this one and one more of these, huh?
Yeah, crazy.
How about that? That is crazy. But, prediction shows will return for us. We'll have other things we'll talk predictions for, like the Winds of Winter. When it's announced, we'll have a couple of months to talk about what we think is coming in that. And, of course, the prequel show or shows, we'll have predictions for those. Once they come out and once they get rolling, it's hard to predict them before they even get started. Well, not too hard. Not that you can't say anything, but
especially
it's not
because I expect we'll get some amount of information revealed as
Absolutely.
It's approaching. We'll get a trailer and some casting, and
definitely
Martin will make a comment and so on. So,
but it's nothing like predicting the end. We'll
True,
be talking
true.
about
Yeah.
what this is going to be all about, like who are the characters going to be. It's more So we'll be starting that journey from the beginning. Whereas with Game of Thrones, well, we've been on the books for a long time, but we didn't start this podcast when the show started. We started a little after it and didn't start covering the show explicitly right away. So that's one cool thing about this whole process is when it comes back around, we'll have learned about how to cover it better. We're so much better at covering Game of Thrones now than we were when we first started. And that's something to look forward to, keeping those processes in place. So there's a lot to talk about today. We have a lot of predictions. The trailers weren't super revealing. The stills weren't super revealing, which is kind of how they've been keeping it this season, which is...
We know Tyrion's going to be in the episode.
We do know
I'm calling
Tyrion's
it. You heard it here first, folks.
Wow, that's a bold prediction. Starting off with a very bold prediction here. Even though Tyrion's in the trailer, Sean is going out on a limb predicting that he'll be in the episode. Wow. All right. This is the hard-hitting stuff you tune in for. We're going to, of course, take a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of, anxiety almost about how some of these characters are being portrayed and how they're, how things are going to go down. A lot of expectations, a lot of consternation, a lot of anxiety. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to defend everything the show has done, but one thing we love to do here, and I think that gives us all a lot of value, is we try to provide a roadmap on how to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, well, we give you other things to think about that might make you like it better, or things that you didn't consider, details that cast things in a different light that have you looking at them differently. So it's kind of philosophy, even if you don't enjoy something, well, we have to cover it. This is what we're here for, and we do enjoy it, but we don't enjoy every minute of it. So. But it just isn't fun to sit up here and complain. As truthful as that might be, it's not fun. Mm-hmm. And that is an important bottom line. And I want to talk about two different characters to start off with. Of course, we're going to talk a lot about Daenerys. Patron Stefan says, not liking the way the show is portraying Dany. Do we really think this is how George will finish her in the books? Well, yes and no. Because, yes, I imagine that whatever her ultimate fate is what George told them. How they get to it, the roadmap, is very different, and that's a huge thing. And of course, with Dany, she's a focus. She's one of the top 2 or 3 most important characters, and by important, I mean the one that people have the most invested in emotionally and pay most attention to and talk about the most. And, well, it's interesting to focus on that, but one of the things we like to do, like I said, is to bring out these other details and things that get lost in the shuffle. A character very close to Daenerys that we talk about some, but don't talk about a lot, is Grey Worm. Mm-hmm. And Grey Worm, well, I'm going to go out and maybe it's on a limb. I'm going to say a lot of this episode is going to be to prepare y'all for the inevitable and prepare ourselves for it too. And I think I've waffled a lot on who I think who's going to die between Jon and Dany. And at one point I was like, neither. At one point I was like both. I never really said John and not Danny. That was one guess I never really made. But now I'm kind of back to my original guess, which is that Danny's going to die and John isn't. And if I'm right, well, that's going to cause a lot of anxiety, consternation in the fandom, a lot of arguing over how her character was covered. But if we go back to how George has intended her story, and we think about it, and we think about how people are going to look at it 30 years from now, or 50 years from now, when the story's been out for a while and people have talked about it for so long, and the conversation has evolved over years because people have all learned so much. Her story, if this is true, and if it goes down the way we think it might, it's going to be seen as a tragedy and a cautionary tale, not as a doing this female character wrong. Although the show might have earned that criticism, but I don't think George will. And that's the difference here, is that it's hard to see them doing it this way or George doing it this way in the books. But George's creativity and mastery of the medium is such that it's hard to imagine how, can you really imagine a master doing his craft? Can you imagine Picasso's unpainted works?
Yeah.
No. So I want to start off with that soapboxing. And Sean, what did you think about that? You've approached things a little differently because you're not as rooted in the books, but you're aware of them and you're aware they're different, and so your take is naturally going to be a little different here.
I do think that it's understanding to me that Danny is a hero to a lot of people.
Yeah, she is. She's overcome so much.
Yeah, and let me clarify, because it implies that I don't think she's a hero when I say that. Let me clarify. I also think she's a hero, but a lot of people who are heroes also have flaws, also make mistakes. I mean,
Theon.
Tragic hero is like, I didn't make that up just now.
It's an old story. Yeah, it's an old characterization.
And I remember early on when I was watching the show, before we even started this podcast, being a little suspicious of Danny. I remember thinking this girl who hardly understands anything about the world. Not even that she's dumb, or she just has lived an awkward life. Yeah. Right.
Well, she was
sheltered, maybe
told really awful things by people who were pretty awful.
But she was set on this path, somewhere between her and her family. It was supposed to rule. She's married to this warlord at a super young age. She just hasn't had the opportunity to really know what real life is like, what regular people is like. Yeah. From a young age, she's been on this course of destiny. It was also reinforced by actual magic, actual destiny type things.
Yeah, things that no one did. See, actual miracles. Yeah.
Right. And so, she tells her new husband, who she expects to support her in every way and to be good at it, I want to go to my home. I want to do what my family's supposed to do. It all seems like correct to her.
Works. Yeah.
Right. And so he's like, all right, let's do it. And he goes out and starts raping and pillaging.
Yeah, and she's like, well, wait a minute.
And I don't know, it's not really fair to blame her for this. They're going to rape and pillage anyway, but now they're doing it in her name. And when she sees this, she doesn't like it. But she doesn't decide, hold on, maybe I don't want to be queen if this is the cost. She decides, we need to wage war differently,
Yes.
And of course, everyone isn't like, okay, we'll just wage war differently. Like, Drogo tries to do that, but everyone else is like, look, man, this is how we do,
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's just showing some sort of naivete that she has. It makes sense for her to have. I would have.
Yeah, we all would have.
Right?
Or more, or even more. Like more naivete. Yeah, we'd be worse probably.
Yeah. But the whole way, her goal never shifts. She maybe tries to mature. She learns some lessons.
Yes.
She tries to do some different things along the way, different ways to prove herself. She takes on advisors. All these things she does. She's bold. She's courageous. She does a lot of good things.
Self-reflective.
Right.
Yeah.
However, she's still hell-bent on this mission.
That mission is the problem.
Right. Mm-hmm. And something I was wondering going into this season, when she realizes, oh, wait, maybe it's not really my mission. I'm not, John's the one, I'm not the one. Is she still going to be hell-bent on a mission?
Yeah, apparently, yes.
And she is. And it's not crazy for her to be, because, maybe with enough time and perspective, she might start to reevaluate. But there's a lot of momentum. We got to beat the Night King. We got to beat Cersei. People are dying and suffering in the meantime. There's time pressure. She's been on this course her whole life. She isn't just suddenly going to shed it all.
Yeah.
Even if she should, it's not reasonable to expect her to. But when she doesn't, and she has nuclear bombs,
it's dangerous.
This makes sense to be worried about a nuclear bomb going off,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
And like you said, I think it's just this kind of this tragic story. Her quest, that has ambition, which I've told this story before about, I remember when I read Julius Caesar as a kid. In my mind, the word ambition was a positive thing. It was this positive character trait. I wanted to be ambitious. But when they wanted to kill Caesar, it was because he was ambitious. Like, why would you kill him? And I realized, oh, well, ambitious people sometimes sacrifice morality, sometimes do things for the greater goal. All these problems you can see go with
being
with
a hero of their own story.
Right. Yeah. And again, if you're, if you're, starting your own business, you're trying to like sell guitars and you're ambitious and you open up a branch, that's one thing. But if you're trying to rule the world and have atomic bombs and you're ambitious, like,
if you're trying to burn other people's guitar stores so yours can be successful, that's even if the other guitar store owner is evil, that's not necessarily a good deed. It's not a good way to get there. So that's a really good point. Yeah.
Rambling a little bit, my point is, to me, this does kind of make sense. It does kind of make sense that she's gonna.
That she can't have this goal, because this is the part that's tragic. This is the part that she should never have been doing in the first place. Everything about her is great, except this unfortunate, tragic bottom line goal she has. Like, that's the tragedy, that Viserys and Aerys and this whole society told her that this was her birthright. And from a very young age, like all of us, when we're taught something as a kid, it's hard to divorce that. And she has divorced a lot of that. She's like, no, killing all these people is wrong. Slavering is wrong. All this other stuff. She got out of that. She got out of that mindset. But this one thing she's never gotten out of. And now as a lot of people have pointed out, it's almost like the ambition behind her cause is being exposed, because she can't say it's her birthright anymore now, because it's Jon's birthright, even though he didn't want it, even though he didn't ask for it, technically by that same system that said it's hers. No, it's not hers, it's Jon's. And once she's confronted, she can no longer say, oh, it's been my birthright. She has to say, oh, it's my destiny to kill tyrants, which is the whole being the hero of her own story thing. Like, in a vacuum, killing all the tyrants, that's a great goal, but she never actually, I don't know that she's done that. I don't know that we can say that she's ended tyranny. She knocked out some tyrants, but she didn't really remove the mechanisms in place. Like Slaver's Bay, she left in charge of people who were not really good people. Better than they were. Better than those slavers, probably. But like Dario in charge over there, is that guy really not going to turn, like, do you really think that guy's not going to turn dark? You know, he might not. But...
Even when she was there with other advisors that we want to think of as good, it was still barely being held together.
Yeah.
Dragons as an enforcement, and still it was barely being held together. Now she left with the dragons and the other advisors. It's really staying together. And there's a lot of things that even if she's trying to do good and she has big, lofty ideals, but I think about this a lot of times, certain things that I might think are good or the way we should do things.
Yeah.
But if we suddenly completely instituted them, it would be just mass chaos, you know? Like, so some of these things she wants to do take more time to pan out, and she's pushing for right now. And it's tough. It's tough to watch this. It's tough to watch her fail. We've been seeing her succeed over and over again, and we want to root for her, but we also see these problems. And I can also imagine it's something in the books could be dealt with better. Because in the books, we could read her internal struggle about, maybe I shouldn't do this, or here's another way to handle it, but if I do, they'll think this. We could see her struggle with this, but in now...
In the show, you can't see that conflict.
Right. You could see what we get in a show, which I don't want to be too negative, but we see her acting. And this, by the way, it's a whole nother element to throw into here, is that she's been hurt personally and emotionally.
A lot.
Right? Whatever else, even if she was thinking with more care and wisdom about the nature of her role in the world and the damage her dragons could do and who should be in charge and all this stuff, it's still going to get muddled by desire for revenge, which Jon had. Whoever else you think is a good guy or a hero or should be the leader, Jon also wanted revenge on Ramsay for killing Rickon. Jon, all these other characters
not like
also get mixed up with emotions and everything. You know,
it's like, for example, like Varys is a hypocrite about his positions on Dany in a lot of ways. For example, like if he's holding out for a siege, we talked about that already. Like, but Varys being a hypocrite doesn't make Dany a good guy, and Tyrion like not framing things properly, and Tyrion maybe being a little bit wrong about how sieges work and things like that. Maybe calling him a hypocrite as well doesn't make me he's wrong about the ethics of killing innocents. Right?
Varys being a hypocrite doesn't mean he's evil or wrong either, right? You can be right about a lot of things and honest about a lot of
fully back that up, but that's, you know, I can't disagree with like, don't kill the innocents. Let's not throw them to the wolves or the dragons. Let's not have collateral damage that we can avoid. And like if we're trying to summarize this, root for Dany's overcoming her adversity, root for her rising above these patriarchal systems, root for her ending slavery, root for her personality, root for her trying to be human in this story that's just so fantastical. But don't root for her to kill a bunch of people to take the throne.
Yeah.
Like, that's just no.
Yeah.
Like, that's that. And this is something that's fascinating to me. And what makes Game of Thrones awesome is even when it's written badly, even when we don't love it, it gives us this amazing common story we can all look at and talk about the morale. It's like what kids do in America. A lot of American kids, not nearly all, for sure. I didn't do it growing up, but they go to Bible school and they talk about Bible stories and the morality of what those characters are doing. And that's, religion aside, that's useful to have a common story we all know that we can talk about, that we know well, that we can refer to as a blueprint for our own behavior or for what's right and wrong. Even though the setting is totally foreign to us, we can still judge that morality, to certain points. It's not like we're judging Dany within the story. We're judging Dany, as a human being and how it impacts us. These things matter. These things really matter, and they're really valuable. So, gotten a little ahead of ourselves there. We had a lot to say about Dany. We have a lot more to say, but let's back it up and do some announcements and a few shout outs and then get right back to it. As always, we have some photos prepared. We have some questions built up from during this opening time, plus a bunch of people sent questions in ahead of time. So let's get to that. Flick is a new app that we are using. We've gotten a nice bunch of y'all to sign up there. We did an episode 5 predictions thread on there, let people weigh in, and we're going to do the same for episode 6. And after the season, I'm starting to reread with the show teaching us all this stuff about what George told the showrunners about endpoints and endgames and all that. It's time for me to go back and look and see which of that was actually foreshadowed and look for those missing clues and just do it all over again because it's fun. And I'll be sharing my thoughts in Flick. So you're going to want to sign up for that to catch my reread thoughts and participate. A lot of y'all are going to reread along with me.
And if you're going to any of these conventions that we'll be at this year, we can have threads for those conventions like Con of Thrones or Worldcon where we can all chat and get push notifications. So that should be very useful.
Yeah. And speaking of Worldcon and Con of Thrones, there's also TitanCon, which we are going to. That's going to be in Belfast in August. TitanCon's pretty small. It's capped at 700 people. So let us know if you're going. And if you're going, you might want to decide pretty soon.
One of those 700 people is George R.R. Martin.
Mm-hmm. And 2 of them are me and Ashaya. So there you go. And of course, for Con of Thrones, you can use the code HISTORY to get $5 off your ticket purchase. And all 3 of us will be at that one doing panels and hanging out and having a good time. All right. First set of questions. Now, as I said on Wednesday, we can't always do all the questions that y'all send us because we don't do predictions on Mondays very much. So we saved that for today. So apologize to anyone who wanted that question answered earlier in the week, but we're answering it now. From Smurvs, what are your death predictions? Well, one of the reasons I brought Grey Worm up in the beginning, and I kind of failed to fully make my point, was that we were so sure Grey Worm was going to die. So all this talk about we're so being sure about Dany's going to die, there's the caveat. Could be completely 100% wrong, and because we were really sure on a couple of deaths that didn't happen. And to be fair, Grey Worm's death wasn't like a narrative buildup like, oh, his character arc is fulfilled. There's all this foreshadowing. We were just like, oh, he's in the front lines and they're going to kill someone. So that's where we were coming from. It wasn't.
And he's in a couple.
Yeah. Of course. So the other half of the couple got killed.
I still think Grey Worm is likely to die before the show ends.
Yeah.
And I still think Varys is going to die, for example.
Yeah, me too.
I agree. Yep.
Just the time has changed.
I'll say I find myself defending the show a lot. Generally speaking, I try to be positive, and I like the show, and I want to be positive about it. And I think some of the criticisms of the show are unfair or are easily counterable. However, a lot of the criticisms are fair, and I have criticisms too. But for how much I love it and how important I'm going to say the show is, I find myself being on the defensive side. When people have emotional reactions, negative reactions, maybe don't have it thought out as well, and they want to attack it, I find myself trying to defend it. And because so many people are like that, I don't need to attack it very much. However, an attack I would make, probably my biggest frustration, especially at this point, is it's hard to predict because I feel they don't follow up on their own groundwork, their own foreshadowing. There's so many things I feel like they set up that then they don't do. And I some of it I think is like nuanced stuff that I pieced together and I figured it out. And
So
they
you can
didn't
maybe
do
say,
it.
maybe
You know?
they didn't actually do that, but sometimes.
But
it's
other
blatant.
times I see, right, it's almost blatant kind of things, and they don't do it. I'm like, man,
It's like
I
if
just-
Varys doesn't die, which,
Yeah, like-
that would be pretty surprising.
Yeah.
it
So
doesn't have to be next episode, but episode 5 or 6.
So maybe I'm just justifying why some of my
It'll be
predictions
episode
are wrong.
7.
It'll be
Yeah.
he got that in his contract. Very
Yeah.
clever of him.
Certainly some of my frustrations might be, self-centered, like I'm just disappointed I was wrong. But I think I can be kind of objective enough, and I kind of know which of my predictions are more stretches or not. But a lot of times I think of something, and other people who are more expert than me agree. And the more we think and talk about it, everyone's kind of on board, and it just doesn't happen. And we're like, what the heck, man? So, and at the same time, some things seem to kind of come out of left field, like, all right, I guess that's what's happening now. And that also can be frustrating. So
yeah.
I guess I'm pointing out that I understand a lot of the frustrations, and a lot of those frustrations make it tough for us to do these prediction episodes.
Yeah, you're right.
But it doesn't make me not want to do it. I still want to look for the foreshadowing, the symbolism, and to project what's happening. And I think I'm not alone in that. Obviously, there's thousands of people who are watching our videos about this, and other people make their own videos. And so it's part of why the show's popular in the first place. So
Good said. So how about some actual predictions, though?
I still am of a mind that neither John or Danny are going to die.
Okay.
That's still my default prediction. But let me also say, I just can't see Cersei dying. I'm just
Really?
trying to envision the scene. The only visual representation that my mind can present is Euron. He's the only person I can actually see
not Jaime.
doing it. I just
Why not
can't
Jaime?
I don't know. I can't say I exactly can explain it why, but one is
and not Dan? You can't see Danny like torching the Red Keep? You can't see that happening?
I think they need to show it. I think they can't just show Danny burning fire
Well, what
onto
if-
a building and now Cersei's dead.
Well,
and
no,
we
they
don't
wouldn't.
see her die.
Surely
you know,
they can
like-
portray that, like the
guess,
the roof collapses on her or something like that. Like
Yeah.
that would be the kind of elegant, like you don't see the blood, but it's 100% certain she's dead.
Yeah.
Like the Emperor falling.
Yeah.
Like the guy's dead. That kind of thing. Well, maybe he's not dead.
Again, I'm not going to make a
That's
strong.
magic.
Yeah. I'm not going to make a strong argument against it, but I'm just saying it.
Okay. All right.
I won't be like, I can't believe they killed Cersei. I won't have that kind of reaction, but I'm more prepared for it to not.
Well, what
die,
about
you know?
Jaime?
Same thing. I think he's more likely to die than Cersei. I'll
Okay.
say that. And I think that the way he dies could be a lot of different ways. I basically expect him to die in a sacrifice of some sort, whether it's in an attempt to kill Cersei or to save Cersei or to save Jon or to save the innocent people of Westeros. Like I can imagine him like
Well, that
jumping
would
on a
be-
grenade, if you will.
That would be the same thing. That would be the same kind of portrayal as he has to kill Cersei to stop her from doing the same thing Aerys was going to do.
Yeah.
Because that wildfire is still there.
right.
There's still
But
wildfire all over King's Landing.
right, but I can see him being in a situation like
Which, by the way,
like Lancel was.
by the way, that could be Danny accidentally blowing it all up.
Yep.
Which
yeah.
would
be
be
another
pretty
way Cersei
unambiguous.
could paint Danny as the villain here.
Not if she dies. If
Right,
if the
no,
wildfire
she
goes
dies.
off, Cersei's not living. Is my guess.
Right, but what if
and
Jaime?
Danny wouldn't either.
What if Jaime sneaks into King's Landing and gets Cersei out of there? Just removes her from King's
She
Landing
wouldn't-
and sail
she
off in a
wouldn't
boat to
go.
Dorne or
She's
something.
not going. She's in this the game. She's the one who said you win or you die. She's not
That's
living.
true. Yeah, that's true.
But that would be an example of them failing to match the foreshadowing if she lives. So I will be frustrated if she lives. Okay, so the counter question here from Seth Wilkins, who also wanted to know who's likely to die, which we've discussed, but he wants to know who is definitely safe. Which you wouldn't say Cersei is definitely safe.
No.
And you certainly wouldn't say that about Jaime. Who do you think is definitely safe? Or I'll start by answering that, and you can think about it because you took the lead on the last one. I'll say definitely safe. Davos is definitely safe. I think Tyrion is definitely safe, and that's it. I don't think anyone else is definitely safe.
With you.
I'm
I
sorry?
don't think Tyrion's definitely safe.
Okay.
I guess Davos is the most safe character in King's Landing.
Well,
that
what
I
do you
can
think is?
of.
Why do you put Tyrion over Davos? I mean Davos over Tyrion rather.
Because Davos isn't the one being part of treasonous talk.
Well, Tyrion hasn't agreed to it yet.
He hasn't agreed to it, but Davos hasn't been part of it. He's not.
That's true.
It's just he has no real danger in
He
that.
would be part of
sense.
it soon, though.
Yeah, he might be, but we just have seen that Tyrion has had this discussion and is going to be talking to Daenerys about certain things, and she might.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm more worried about Tyrion than Davos because of that.
One thing I'm certain of is that, and people are worried about, and I don't think they should be worried about, but, to each his own, is that Jon will kill Dany. This is so not going to happen, in my opinion. That's super, super unlikely. If someone kills Dany, it'll be herself, like, not intentionally, but, this wildfire scenario, or her just, like, going too far, losing it in battle. But, yeah, Jon doing the deed himself? No. Maybe even, yeah.
I thought of another
really
person
don't
I think
think so.
that's safest and that is not in King's Landing yet, but will be, I guess. Arya.
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to
I don't think Arya dies either. I don't think there's any chance Arya dies.
But
It's
she's just
pretty
on her
unlikely.
way to King's Landing, so I'm going to count her among the King's Landing characters, whereas we wouldn't count
That's fair.
Sansa or Pod or Brienne or something.
Does Sandor get to live after killing his brother, or does he
I think he dies too.
fail, or they both die?
I think he dies.
I don't think he fails, but both dying maybe.
Yeah, I think he dies.
I think he dies. Yeah.
Okay. So we haven't named a whole lot of characters we think are safe. I mean, if you go back to like Winterfell, like Sansa's totally safe in my opinion. Like, there's no chance he dies unless Tormund comes after Jon to like part of some rescue. He's
Yeah.
safe too.
I generally speaking do think that the characters that stayed north or whatever are safe.
The question was King's Landing
Right.
specifically. So yeah.
I'll tell you though, I don't necessarily even think that Davos is safe.
Okay.
Although let me like argue back and forth against myself. Okay. Going back to the Red Wedding, I felt like leading up to the Red Wedding, they gave us some more time with Talisa, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like they did that to make it more tragic when she got killed.
rip her hearts
Give her
out later.
more, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I thought was happening with Brienne, right?
Okay.
That's why I was so sure that Brienne was going to die. That the fact
Instead,
that
they get a different kind of heartbreak.
right, yeah.
She lives, but she's been, jilted or whatever.
But my point being that it makes sense that the characters that it would be most heart-wrenching to die are the ones that would die.
I guess
you didn't think of
thinking
Caitlyn
that for
isn't
a while.
Right. Well, that's what I'm gonna say. It's like earlier on.
Yeah, earlier on.
Caitlyn's not charging into battle. She's not in harm's way. She doesn't deserve to die. So you don't think she's going to. And holy crap, she does. And so now you start, well, anyone could. And you're like looking for hints that someone might die. And one hint is that they charge into battle. But another hint is that you really care about them.
Yeah.
You really cared about the almost the more righteous they are. It's almost like a target on their back. Oberon,
Yeah.
So that makes me feel like Davos would be one of the most heart-wrenching characters to die, and he's heading into battle again. Is he really going to make it through a fourth major battle like no one else has?
Maybe not, but this is a battle I don't know he's going to be super, super involved in, but maybe he will be.
You know what I really want for Davos? I want, for the final he lives. There's a final episode where you see, whatever, montagey thing where like it goes over all the different characters that are alive, where they are now, that sort of thing. I kind of expect them to do that. There's so many characters they want us to see, like Sam and Gilly and the baby and the new baby, something like that. But Davos, I just want to see him coming home to his wife and her just slapping him in the face. Like, not a letter? You learn to read and write. Poor Maria. Anyways.
He's going to go back there and pretend he still doesn't know how to read and write. He's like, no, I still don't know how to. What can I do? Like,
By the way, here's one death prediction that I have. Magic.
Okay.
Magic is going to die. I think we start the series off with it appearing.
But it's definitely there before it appears. It's just muted.
Right. Maybe die is not the right word, but it's going to fade away. I think that the Night King's dead. I think that if Drogon doesn't die, he's going to fly off to Essos. I think that
Shay made that prediction, right? That's your prediction, yeah?
Yeah, to Valyria.
You
to
think so?
Valyria. She's
Like-
talking more
like-
specifically with Drogon,
like
which I agree with.
Yeah, with Drogon, because I was thinking
That's where
about
Jorah too.
Fire and
Yeah.
Blood. There's a bit with Arya Targaryen and Balerion.
And the show did it,
And the
too.
show did it.
Yeah.
Drogon went there.
And by the way, Arya might not die, but I do think she's going to fade away. She's going to not go back to Winterfell.
I agree.
I think all the mystical characters, Melisandre's gone. I think all the mystical, fantastic characters are all going to be gone by the end.
Okay.
Which would include the Mountain and
Mountain's
maybe
toast.
even Qyburn.
Qyburn probably too. Yeah, I don't see Qyburn living.
I don't know if that would apply to Jon.
Yeah. Now here, let me just say one more thing about these.
Ghost went back north.
Yeah.
Dire wolves appearing that far south. That was like unusual in the beginning,
Yeah.
He's going to go back.
Now, one other thing that I think is pretty relevant here that's, well, not relevant, but to kind of speaking back to our old predictions, something that wasn't working, they're in a lot of danger and they're not not a super major character like prediction style. Pretty much failed us like almost all the time. That just didn't work as a prediction.
Yeah.
That's not, and the thing of it is, that's because this isn't logical. And I don't mean that the show isn't logical. It is and it isn't. I mean that these are stories, and the most likely to die, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true.
That doesn't ever matter. It's how they want it to go, and what George has told them, and the combination of those two things, and like being in the front lines in a story that doesn't really, in certain stories it does. Like if that pattern is developed, then you follow it, but that pattern hasn't been developed here.
There's also, I pointed this out just when we were talking before, that a lot of these things that you want to predict because it seems like they're building up to it. It seems like there's this poetry to it, this artistic unity of Jon tells Theon, you can be both, a Stark and a Greyjoy. So now Theon's going to come back and tell Jon, you can be both, a Targaryen and a Stark. But that didn't happen. Well, life doesn't always work out poetically. So Bronn isn't necessarily going to kill Tyrion with that crossbow.
Yeah.
So basically, each of you, Aziz is saying, hey, you can ignore certain things because sometimes things just happen how they're going to write it in a poetic way. And Sean's saying the exact inverse of that, which makes sense because it's a show that they write. But it's just funny. Your points were the inverse of one another.
But it kind of got us to the same place. That's funny. From DTS, could the ash we see in the throne room vision be Dragonstone exploding? It's built on a volcano, is it not? It is built on, well, the island is volcanic, yes. I wouldn't say, it's not on a volcano. There's just volcanoes it's a volcanic island, you could say. But I really don't think so, because in those scenes of the throne room, not only is the ceiling collapsed, but there's just so much ash that I don't think that would come from a volcanic explosion that's not that close. It's still leagues away by sea. It's not close enough, I think, to have blown a hole in the ceiling and done all that stuff. So I think we're still stuck with the most likely interpretation of that the burned throne room is this wildfire plot that's been left behind. And by the way, Sean, there's another piece of evidence that I should have mentioned in this discussion. Bran's visions of the dragon over King's Landing, which is probably Drogon at this point, includes visions of wildfire, King Aerys, and Jaime stabbing him. Those are all the elements there.
That's true.
That's really why I'm thinking that this is Jaime's arc, is to be the Queen Slayer, and he has to kill his own sister to do it, because she's the one threatening to do all this. But
it would be pretty tragic if Jaime goes in, kills Cersei, and then Cersei would have died anyway, whether wildfire, dragonfire, or whatever.
Yeah, wow, that's a great. Good point.
As he's thrusting a knife in, the dragon burns flames down.
Yeah, that would be, man. That could be it.
That's it. That's my prediction.
Well, that's funny, because next question is Thomas Pappas. Curious to how Sean, Aziz, and Shay would like the episode to play out. Is that your prediction? Well, he says how you would like it to play out. I don't know if that's how you would like it to play out. But we all like being right, though. So.
It is how I'd like it to play out if I'm right.
I would like them to back off and be like, let's not kill everybody, and let's find another way to kill Cersei.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's possible.
What I would like to happen in quote unquote reality, you know what I mean, is for the least number of people to die, for just people to be in charge at the end. But I wouldn't like them to actually write it that way, because it would be disappointing. It'd be boring. It wouldn't be tragic. It wouldn't evoke any emotions. So yeah, it's such a weird thing. Many times it comes up where you want people to die. Why should I want people to die? But I want to be moved. Yeah. I want to care. I want it to be emotional. I want it to be powerful. To matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. You want the tension to be real. Yeah. Well, Shay, what do you think? Do you have some opinion? You have an answer for Tommy here?
On what I would like to happen.
What you would like to happen.
And what I would like to happen, I would like for people to not infight and kill each other, and for the Targaryen forces, which are Jon and Dany, to not, do that. But I think it's going to happen. But I would like for that to not happen. I just want them to have a united front. So that.
I would like the characterizations to be strong. You know, like I have more of a simple wish, I suppose, more of a general wish that it's going to be probably this huge battle. From what we've seen as far as behind the scenes stuff, this is an enormous battle set, just ridiculously huge, and they didn't, hang that on the wall not to use it. So it's going to be a very action-oriented episode, but we have all these major plot elements that need to be resolved, and I hope they handle them well. So that's what I want. I hope they do a good job. That's really what I want to play out. I don't want the fandom to hate it afterwards, and I know some people will no matter what. You're going to get 25, 30% the fandom hating it. I don't want 50 to 80% of it to hate it.
Yeah.
I want us to end on at least a decent note where people aren't like hating the whole experience, which would be really unfortunate because we had a lot of fun going through this. If the last episode stinks, second last episode stinks, I hope that doesn't ruin the whole thing for people because that's just too bad. That would be the tragedy.
I do think that on some level they have to appeal to the masses.
Oh, yeah. A very high level. I mean, we think about this. We're not even 1% of Game of Thrones fandom. Like, we sometimes we forget that. It's a really tiny percentage we are here.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that the masses will want...
Both of you two are 1% of Game of Thrones fandom?
No, but us three.
Yeah,
three of us. Yeah.
There's about 300 total people out there.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of robots in our chats.
Yeah, the other people in our chat are just accidentally clicked the link. But I think a thing that needs to happen for the masses to be happy is for Cersei to die. I think that's just this payoff moment that everyone is waiting for. Same thing with the Mountain. I think that's just a payoff moment everyone's waiting for, and I kind of expect them to do that just for that reason. But I also have a hard time envisioning how it's going to happen.
Yeah,
and I do also think it needs to be bittersweet. It can't just be this perfect, tidy, happy ending.
Agree.
But what they think is bittersweet might be different from what I think. I didn't think it was that sad for... I mean, again, it's not like I wanted Lyanna and Theon to die, but just relative to if Davos and Dany had died, I want to really be sad,
Yeah.
For example, I think what's happening right now is already bittersweet. Like they defeated the Night King and they're fighting each other.
Yeah, that's true.
I think everything that's happening right now satisfies that for me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
From Scott Westbury, why is Jon a better ruler to Daenerys? And this is getting into what we were talking about before about, we want things to work out. We want it to be realistic, but it talks about like what makes a good leader. The question continues, Jon has very little actual experience ruling and dealing with political intrigues. He does the right/moral thing even when it isn't the wise or best thing to do. This is the idealistic ignorance that got him knifed at Castle Black and had Northern Lords ready to break away from him. As ruler of Westeros, whole or in part, these entanglements and issues only become more complicated and less black and white. Jon is a person who sees so much in black and white regardless of the fallout. Is that a better ruler? It's not necessarily. It really does get into a lot of philosophy about the ideal ruler. Do you want... someone like Jaehaerys, who was very active and imposed his will in very many positive ways. I think maybe if we were to pose this question back to Scott, would Jon build a system of roads throughout the Seven Kingdoms like Jaehaerys did? I don't know that he would. That's the description of the reluctant ruler. He definitely wouldn't, leverage the throne for his personal desires like Robert or Aegon the Unworthy did. But on the other hand, would he leverage it for good, for like unquestionably good things? That's where the reluctant leader thing is like, I don't know. What would he do? Would he just sit back and dispense justice and not push any agendas, positive or negative?
I think he might, but the problem is that other people around him might be more manipulatable by people around him pushing their own agendas, the little fingers of the world, whatever.
Maybe.
But I think you can flip this around another way too. That same moral idealism or whatever that got him killed, okay? It also got the North united.
Mm-hmm.
It also got the wildlings safe.
Yes.
That lack of moral commitment got Robb and his whole family killed, right? So it's not,
Yep.
Jon would have married the Frey girl, and you see what I'm saying? So there's arguments on both sides.
There's no easy answer here, and that's part of why monarchy stinks in the first place, because you get these situations where even under the best kind of scenarios, you still end up with a really bad ruler eventually, and there's no way around that. But in a voting system, you can still have that happen in a voting system too, but you can't have the most awful person, who's out there. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but it might not be totally off topic because they have brought it up in the show. Yes.
Dany wants to break the will. Will she? It seems like at this point she's not. It seems like she's back to being. I want to be the top spoke on a wheel. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
But it was discussed. It is a point of the show, and they may even go there. And I also want to say, even monarchs have counselors. You know what I mean? Like,
so it's a question of Jon versus Dany, Jon versus Joffrey. It's easy to tell the difference when it's Jon versus Joffrey. Like, no one wants Joffrey. But with Jon versus Dany, you get legitimate arguments, I think. And what about Ned versus Tywin? I think that Ned, you can point to some of these same quote-unquote mistakes because he's doing the right moral thing. But Ned's legacy after death is really powerful. People still want to be like him. People still wanted to fight for his ideals even though he was dead. No one wants to fight for Tywin's ideals. They're forced into it.
Yeah.
Even though he may have, quote, handled things, quote-unquote, better in certain situations, the after effects of that blew up in his face. It's like, oh, that's because people wanted to kill him. Yeah. People wanted to kill him because of shit he did to them, right? Yeah. People wanted to kill Ned because he was a good guy in their way doing bad things.
Yeah. Bad guys wanted to kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. Who wanted to kill Tywin? Good people.
Yeah.
Well, and some bad people too. But that's who your enemies are says a lot about you. And who your friends are says a lot about you. And that's the thing about Dany. Yes, she may be turning south here, but she's always had good people around. She's always identified who the good people of character are, for the most part. And when they weren't good characters, she a lot of times recognized that later.
And good people have rallied to her also.
Yeah, because she's a symbol of goodness in a lot of ways. I mean, you free the slaves and that's good. Like, there's no way around that. That's really good. And why would you want to argue against that?
It might not have been planned out well. And the way she freed the slaves might have been with nuclear weapons, which end up hurting some innocents. And so people around her are like, hey, maybe you shouldn't use those nuclear weapons. Yeah. But still, hey, keep trying to do good things.
Yeah. So it's complicated for sure. All right, moving on. Sarah, I keep thinking about one of the writers saying they filmed with someone from the past. Who would surprise us? What if it's Jason Momoa? In Dany's vision, she turns from the throne and goes to see Drogo and her son. What if she sacrifices herself and returns to him? Yeah, see, that was driving my earlier comments about Dany being like a Jesus-type figure where she sacrifices herself to save humanity. I don't think that's on the table anymore because that would have been something that would have been versus the Night King. However, Sarah raises a good point that in that vision, she does turn from the Iron Throne and goes to see Drogo and her son. However, Drogo and her son are dead. So if she's going to them,
maybe she has to die for that,
which is what Sarah is saying. If she sacrifices herself, I don't know if it's sacrifice is the thing here, but death. Yeah, I think it portends her death, not necessarily a sacrifice.
She did also turn from that though.
Did she? Okay,
right?
Yeah, she went back into.
Yeah, she's drawn in, but went back.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. She turned back from that too, which might also mean death. Either way, it doesn't bode well. I don't think.
Darn, prophecies are so hard to interpret.
They are really hard to interpret. And this is one where I hope they stick to, like you said, like if they just abandon this dream vision and don't if the throne room doesn't have stuff happen to it, be like, wait, what was that all about?
Yeah,
it might still make sense, but it won't. It could make sense in some less obvious way, some more subtle way. But we'll see. We'll wait and see. No judging before we get it. From William Copeland, Yara must make a return in the next episode. She needs to face Euron to make him pay the iron price. That got me wondering, as we've not seen her for a while, how big could her fleet have grown? Well, Euron's fleet grew really huge, really fast, so there must still be some wood around there for them to make more ships. Has she had ballistas and things like that added to her ships? And that would also play into Dany's hands, causing a distraction while she launches an attack. Yeah, I do expect there to be some kind of movie-style appearance of other characters here during this final, battle of the five armies kind of thing, where from the Hobbit, where everyone shows up for the final battle.
I didn't even think of it till just now. That's how it's going to play out. The Eagles are going to come.
Hey, Sean, it'll be ravens.
Yeah, it'll be ravens. Yeah, Bran will be controlling them.
No. It's going to be Don Henley and Glenn Fry.
Yep. Okay, so I think this is a good point by William Copeland here. I think Yara will likely return. If she's fighting for Dany, she wants to get rid of Euron. Now's the time. Gang up on him, So I could see that. Other people who might appear, maybe Edmure is another possibility. Given Sarah's question about filming with somebody from the past who would surprise us.
Is there anyone else that Qyburn might bring back alive? Is there anyone that wasn't blown up that theoretically could be brought back?
Earlier in the season, we predicted maybe a candidate would be Jaqen H'ghar, but that seems like that's too late now. You don't have a showdown with like a faceless assassin during a big battle episode. I think they would have introduced him already or something. I don't know. It's possible.
Arya
but I
with
kinda
someone's
doubt it.
face, maybe.
Yeah, that could happen. Yeah, Arya with someone else's face. Yeah, that could happen for sure.
Incidentally, that's something I think I'll be frustrated by. It's something that makes it hard to predict. That Arya could just be anyone. Like, it makes it hard to predict,
Arya
and that's a
could be
possibility.
Jaime,
So I don't want that to happen. But
Okay, so we'll just wait and see about that. Lord Commander George the Golden. The bittersweet ending that I would like the most for both Jon and Dany is to survive the battle with Cersei and then having to deal with the consequences of only one of them being able to rule. However, I can't help but think of the line, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die, and think the story is more likely to go this route, with one or both dying in the battle or in the aftermath. They are planning the idea that could go all wrong for Dany and for Jon to be king. They are planting that seed, yes. And I've flat out said that it's not unlikely. I didn't go as far as say Jon would be king, though. If you notice that I didn't go that far, which we might guess, well, why not, Aziz? If Dany's dead and Jon isn't, why wouldn't he be king? Well, I have a lot to say about that, but it's not. I'm not ready to bring it up just yet. It's later in the episode. But I have another idea. A couple other people in the fandom have been rallying behind the sense of it, and I'll get to that in a bit. From Juan Felipe Mendez. Jon's conversation with Tormund makes me think that he might die and live his second life in Ghost Beyond the Wall, but I don't think that show-only watchers would get it. Thoughts? Yeah, okay, so that is a concept from the books that skin changers, when they die, their human form dies, their spirit sort of goes into the animal. And that's the mechanism that some people expect to be portrayed in the books, that Jon will go into Ghost, and then Melisandre will pull his spirit back from Ghost into his body. And because, especially that's a popular theory because it's portrayed in the first chapter of A Dance with Dragons, which is the book Jon dies in. Through Varamir Sixskins, he dies, and then he goes into a wolf, and then later his spirit is detected in there. They don't know it's Varamir, but they know someone's in there. And Bran, when he's learning to skin change, he goes with all these ravens. The three-eyed crow, Blood Raven, tells him all these birds have these spirits of many dead children in them, like long dead children of the forest in them. He calls them the singers. They call themselves the singers, but it's the children of the forest. Same difference. So, but I agree that it wouldn't make sense for the show because they have never once shown Jon skin changing into Ghost, which he does in the books. So they made that Bran only, but of course, as you know, you've read enough.
Bran has all other powers also that we don't necessarily attribute to Jon.
Right. So in the books, all of them have the warging.
By the way, none of the Stark kids have died before their wolf. Is that an accurate statement?
Not yet.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
That would be a first if Jon died.
Yeah, right? I guess that's true. No, technically, Robb died before Grey Wind.
Oh, okay.
You're right.
Yep.
By like a few seconds.
Yeah.
So maybe Robb worked in Grey Wind.
That is the theory.
All for naught.
Yeah, and that's why,
that is a theory.
And that's why
he
Grey
was
Wind
like,
was making terrible sounds and trying to get loose and all these things.
It's a popular but very sad fan theory that's kind of, doesn't go anywhere. It's just like, I think this is what happened. Everybody's like, oh, damn. Yeah, it might have. It's really... really sad. From Treehugger, has Dany even shown any excitement that she isn't the last member of her family? All she saw was competition. Well, I think we're being fair to Dany. She hasn't really been that aggressive about it. Her immediate reaction was like, whoa, that puts you ahead of me. What the hell? And Jon's like, no, I don't care about that. After the battle, if we're being fair to Dany, after the battle, she just went and just wanted to kiss Jon. There was no like, oh, I'm scared of you. She just was like, let's have an intimate moment together. And then Jon broke off and was like, and she's like, yeah, that, huh? The elephant in the room. And she still was willing to trust him, even though he had a better
up
claim.
To that, he was avoiding her also.
Yes. So she wasn't paranoid. She wasn't like descending into madness over this. It was just like, this sucks. But she's not trusting Jon. She was willing to let him keep the secret and just be it. Like she was willing to trust him, to never reveal it, to not stab her in the back. She was totally willing to trust him. So I'm okay with her not showing this excitement that that she isn't the last member of her family because she finds out that, he being a man, being whatever, she immediately correctly suspects the possibility. Now, I don't think Jon wants the throne like that, certainly not to stab her in the back for it, but she doesn't know that. And it's just fear. It's just like her immediate reaction. But with time to reflect, she was very calm about it. So I think people may be being a little unfair to Dany about that. Not necessarily you, Treehugger. You're not saying negative things about Dany. But I do think a lot of this raises that question because a lot of people are thinking she's like jealous and just like naked ambition. I don't think it's that simple.
Also, another reason you might care about family is because there's like a bond or a loyalty or a commitment or something that you would have to them. And just because you find out there's some long lost member of your family doesn't mean you suddenly have this bond and loyalty and connection to them. You know, when I find out I'm actually the Prince of Luxembourg, and also I have a younger brother, I don't suddenly love the younger brother. I don't even know him.
Yeah.
And he might be trying to take the throne of Luxembourg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, screw that guy. Sean Green?
I will say
Sean
this is
Blue?
a
Sean
perfect
Pink.
time for me to
Others.
bring up a super chat that we got that I put later in the episode from Steven Stark, who said, Ashea is the best, Aziz is a legend, Sean is the Prince of Luxembourg. I can't even get it out. It's just, that's what she said, but no, I really can't.
From Carrie Neves, the heavy foreshadowing of Dany getting pregnant, a red herring to throw us off so we wouldn't foresee her dying before the end. Interesting. That's a possibility, but I think that really people just were more relying on her plot armor. She just seemed like she was just going to survive. It just felt like, given the every story, that almost every work of fiction ever, that she's one of the heroes and she's probably going to survive. I think that was it. But maybe the pregnant thing, maybe that helps. Maybe that boosts it. Makes it, some people, like some corners of the fandom might think she's even safer. But I feel like most people kind of thought she was safe anyway. It's only now that people are starting to go, oh, she might not live, I mean, people thought that before, but they didn't necessarily know. They didn't necessarily have specific reasons why. Now we can see, we can see almost exactly how it could happen. From Mr. Mitchell 954, are D&D undercutting Dany's entire arc and path to Mad Queen by not properly fleshing out Tyrion and Varys' BS hangups and consistently bad advice? Yeah, I think they are a little bit, because people are a little hung up on Tyrion and Varys' intrigues and bad advice. And it's fair to say that they are bad advice. Like, Tyrion has not been a good military strategist, just period. He has not had, he's had more losses than wins. He's made really big, obvious mistakes. And he hasn't had any great, like, anything was like, that was really well done,
I want to argue about that a little bit. I'm not so sure they were big, obvious mistakes. Maybe they were, but we're looking at it in hindsight.
No. Even he says some of them were big, obvious mistakes,
Yeah.
like not thinking of Euron's surprise attack on the fleet both times. Like, come on.
Well, part of that is I don't think we can wholly, and this is part of my point why I don't think it's a big obvious mistake. Because if it's a big obvious mistake, someone else would have thought of that. Someone somewhere.
Well,
one of the
that's why
fleet
people
members.
That's why people
Tyrion
are,
isn't a sailor.
No,
he's not an expert.
I agree, but that's why people are accusing the writing of being bad, because it is that obvious.
Okay, right.
It's D&D's not fleshing them out. Yeah,
But I'm thinking, for example, of the idea when he wanted to go take Casterly Rock, like let's siege King's Landing with
that's
local
fine.
forces, and
Yeah.
and that he failed there. But I don't think it was necessarily a bad plan. It just
I
happened
agree.
to get
No,
outwitted.
No,
so,
but it doesn't count as some great victory either. Which
True.
he does not have.
True.
He doesn't have any, like, oh, look at how well he, like Blackwater, sure. But that even that wasn't fully him. That was like a team effort. So I think that's fair. And Varys also, we talk a little earlier about, he's a little bit hypocritical about some of these things, and some of that is bad military advice. Like, they're both talking about, like, getting the commoners to rise up and starve them out so they attack Cersei. Like, that's not better for them, And whether that's just bad logic or just not understanding how horrible sieges are for commoners, or somewhere in between, it isn't exactly good. It's definitely bad advice, or definitely inconsistent advice. It's not good advice, It's not properly
it might
framing.
be better than burning them all. It doesn't mean that it's good.
Yeah.
It might be better,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I feel like they could do even better.
Sure, okay.
Especially because there's even other hints at it too, which I kind of wonder, by the way. That was part of the plan at Casterly Rock, was to sneak in through the tunnels underground. We had multiple, Varys, Tyrion, Arya, all should know about tunnels underground. I'm wondering if there might be some covert 20 good men sneaking in to the Red Keep.
That would make sense. Now, on the other side of that, I hope they think of that, but I also expect Qyburn's aware of that too. Qyburn knows the Red Keep as well.
Call,
he knows who Varys is. So if they're on top of their game, they cover both that strategy and the counter strategy. But I don't know if they will. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do. But to get back to the question, I think that Dany's descent is, if you look for it, it's there. You can see it. You can see all the pieces. You can see all the loss she's had, the people pushing at her from so many directions, the trauma, everything. But Tyrion and Varys aren't being shown to be wrong. You have to really think about it. Oh, maybe. Some people kind of get it.
Maybe they will.
Yeah, so hopefully we see that. Lord Commander George the Golden. Here's our first image from the show itself. Why are the Golden Company outside the wall? Some people have wondered about, does that just not make any strategic sense? Well, it's not stupid. It's questionable, and we see it in the books. For example, when Quentin and Ironwood and Garrus Drinkwater sign up under false names to fight in the Sellsword Company, they find themselves fighting fake Unsullied beneath the walls of Yunkai, I believe it was. Or maybe Astapor, doesn't matter. The fact is they fought men outside the walls.
Burn at Slaver's Bay.
Yeah,
It
burn at
doesn't
Slaver's
matter.
Bay.
It doesn't matter which city.
And the point of fighting outside the walls is the fact that they're Golden Company. They're not her people. They're mercenaries. She doesn't care about their lives that much. She doesn't want them necessarily to approach the walls. She wants to meet them outside. It's a strategy. You don't always want. You don't necessarily. It's not necessarily better to have them on the walls. It's better for keeping them alive. But again, Cersei doesn't care about that.
Them in the walls could be a threat. They could just seize the city.
That's true. She may not fully trust them,
Yeah.
so that's smart. Like if battle goes against them, if the battle goes against Cersei, they could turn, and that which she wouldn't be worried about for her household troops, but for a Sellsword Company, yeah. So it actually does make sense. Whether the writers accidentally got this right or not, I don't know, but it does make sense.
It could also just be for the sake of a good cinematic moment, which I
it's
would be
almost
frustrated by,
certainly that.
but I will also be impressed by. It's going
Yeah.
to be an awesome image to see those armies lined up and clash.
Yeah. From Rob Charlton, do you think there is anything that might come of the fact that Jon can be hurt by fire, but Dany can't? Like the magic behind that. I don't, but it would be a cool thing. It would be neat for them to introduce that. I just don't see them going that way. And we're not sure Dany can't be hurt by, say, wildfire. She seems to be immune to regular fire. But yeah, Jon burned his hand.
It seemed like the Night King was immune to regular fire and also
Certainly
dragon fire, right?
Yeah,
so that
that's
would
true.
be pretty cool, actually, if Dany lands her dragon, walks into the Red Keep, and then Cersei just blows up herself and everyone. But then Dany's still standing at the end of it.
That would be cool.
She walks out of the flames.
So is Dany a cockroach?
There's
Hottest cockroach I've ever seen. Hottest cockroach. See it in the fire with it.
Several people have asked, what's the history of Golden Company versus Unsullied and Golden Company versus Dothraki? We don't have Golden Company versus Dothraki explicitly, but surely they've fought them. I mean, they're a Sellsword Company in Essos. There's no way they haven't fought the Dothraki. I don't know what kind of record they have against them, but they clearly haven't been destroyed, so there's that much. As far as Golden Company versus Unsullied, there is a very notable historical anecdote with that. If we recall, the Unsullied are also the city guards of the city of Qohor, and that's because they hired Unsullied to fight against this giant Dothraki horde, and the Unsullied really acquitted themselves so well that the Dothraki cut off their braids and walked off because the Unsullied, they considered themselves defeated by this small spearman unit. And so the city guard of Qohor, where their spears all have braids of hair on them in honor of that victory. However, the city of Qohor many years later tried to stiff the Golden Company on a payment, and the Golden Company wasn't having that, and they sacked Qohor. So that implies they defeated the Unsullied's defenses there. So it wasn't, Dany's size group of Unsullied, but still something.
So if there's a Unsullied beat Dothraki, wait, am I saying it right? The Unsullied beat the Dothraki, but
No,
then
it's not a triangle, no.
But then the Golden Company beat the Unsullied, so
No.
then the Golden Company would beat the Dothraki.
No, that's not what I said.
No?
No, it was
Okay.
Golden Company versus Unsullied and Golden Company versus Dothraki. There's no third
Okay.
part of that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Daniela looks at some wordplay here, looking at what Sansa has become, and she's learned from Littlefinger, whose sigil is a mockingbird, and she is Littlebird. Littlefinger, Mockingbird, Littlebird.
Mm.
That's cool. I don't even think that was intentional, but it might have been. It would have been George's intent because he wrote all that. So that makes it more likely that it was intentional. But I don't know. It's very cool either way. I like it. Good job. Good catch.
Also, Littlefinger's gone, and Sansa's not a little bird anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Strange TV. Thanks for all the content. I would like your take on the picture of Dany in the throne room on Dragonstone. Do you think it is Jaime being questioned? I don't, but I'm curious about that too. I don't know who it is. It's a very, very interesting shot. Shade's going to pull it up. It's semi-darkness. It's kind of meant to cast her in this descent, I think. It looks dark. And yeah, I don't know who that is.
Might be Varys being questioned.
Yeah, I think that's more likely. It's hard to tell, and we'll just have to wait and see. But the imagery here is really powerful. Another shot we have of Tyrion approaching her, and he's looking really anxious, like he's worried about approaching her. And the symbolism is just overwhelming. He passes in front of a carved dragon straight into its jaws. He's walking into its mouth. It's walking into the mouth of the dragon there. And
do you think it's possible that he's going to get eaten by Drogon because of this symbolism? Like, do you think they're doing something like that?
No, I don't think so.
Just to be clear.
It's possible, but no, I don't think so, because we see... well, the trick here is, this is what's tricky about this whole thing, is when does this scene take place? I don't get it, because the last we see, she's right outside of King's Landing. So either this is after, and she did survive the battle. She did survive, but she's lost, or something else has happened.
Just so you know, I think that where we left off last episode, I don't think she's about to charge on her dragon and the Unsullied are going to charge and the battle's on. I think she's going back to Dragonstone. I think she's going to be patient.
Okay, well, she has to. The Northern forces aren't even there yet.
Exactly. I think she's going to go back to Dragonstone, wait for Jon to show up. She may still do something rash afterwards, but I think there's going to be time to set the battle up.
That would explain a lot, yeah.
And in that time, we're going to see some intrigue with Varys and whoever else.
Yeah, okay. Good point. Now we have this other shot of Dany beyond the painted table, and this is a really good detail. She looks a little disheveled, which she should, because she's had all this terrible emotional stuff happen. But her hair is mostly unbraided, which is fantastic. It refers to what we just talked about with the Dothraki cutting off their braids. She didn't cut it off, but she undid it because she suffered a loss.
It refers to something else, too. She doesn't have Missandei there to do her damn hair. Like, of course she's going to look all messy.
Wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah, the logistics of not having her hair braider just...
Yeah.
Damn, okay, yeah. Really, all the little things falling apart, too. From Benjamin Serbhel, I'm very sure I said your name wrong. I apologize for that. Is it possible there is a time gap through the siege? In other words, like if they have a siege and we wait some time. So this is basically what we were just talking about. So it's not really a siege, although Cersei has sort of shut the doors. She's letting commoners come in, but she's holed up in King's Landing, although that's been true since season 1.
Yeah.
She's never really left, except to go to Winterfell in like the first episode. the most statically placed character. Not that that's a negative. It's just funny. So I kind of doubt it, because it seems like they're going to push the envelope. Dany's angry. She's not going to rush into it, like you said, but she's going to attack as soon as she can. I think she's going to move as soon as it's logistically feasible. She might be waiting for some of these other armies to show up, like the Prince of Dorne. We might see Edmure Tully. That's another character that's one of those characters who might come back that we haven't seen. He never died or anything. So his army could show up. He could bring 500, 1,000 Riverlanders, something like that. There's a lot of little possibilities like that. So it does make sense for her to wait a bit and sit back. So let's see, from Nancy Groff. I count at least 3 missing elements: Nymeria's Pax, Faceless Men / Jaqen, and the Iron Bank. Are D&D abandoning them, or do you have predictions? Do you see anything / anyone else not accounted for? Well, a couple of them we've mentioned already. Faceless Men, I think Nymeria's Pack hasn't been abandoned. I think they kind of just addressed it and said, that's it. This is where she is now. Maybe she'll show up. But I wouldn't say that's an abandonment, because they did address her, and Arya's like, no, you're not coming with me. This is you now. I think that might have been her goodbye. But Jaqen, I think they kind of did the same. Jaqen didn't care that Arya left, and they sent the waif after, or the waif went after her, and the waif, didn't kill her. So maybe that's the unfinished business. The waif didn't kill her, and the waif is still alive, and they're still out there. Maybe they don't know she escaped. I don't know. That is, I would call that unfinished business, but but we have already talked about the possibility of Jaqen coming back, and it seems like they missed their window if they wanted to do that, but we'll see.
Can I share something from the chat that
Absolutely.
just really amuses me?
Yeah.
Leslie Chevalier says, I'm sure Dany's hair is the last thing on her mind. And Alice Io replies with, it's the first thing on her head. I'm sorry, I just had to share that.
That's really good.
Okay, that was all.
The first thing on her head. So speaking of unaccounted for people, Dr. Meatball asks, is Ilaria Sand dead or still in the dungeons? I guess we don't know for sure, but a lot of time has passed. So I think she's probably dead.
I assume she's dead. But again, they've made it very difficult to predict. There have been multiple times when I assumed someone was dead and they came back, and multiple times where I assumed someone was alive or part of the show, if you will, but have never come back. I mean, maybe they'll all come back all at once.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really cover the Iron Bank there from Nancy's question. I think that they probably won't be addressed here. They may be addressed in the last episode. You know, like whoever sits on the throne has to deal with them or something like that. But I'm guessing they'll just shuffle off and say, nah, hand wave that away and say whoever takes the throne is going to have to deal with that afterwards, but it's not part of the main plot. It's not super exciting to deal with finances or whatever. But that is, you know, Jaqen and the Iron Bank as a concept together is something that people thought might have been a thing, but they haven't gone that direction.
And you guys mentioned Ilaria Sand already?
Yeah, just
she was confirmed dead in an interview with the actress.
Oh,
Oscar.
okay. Well, there you go.
Assuming that is accurate.
So we talked a lot at the beginning about Dany, and both of us read the same thread on Twitter that helped summarize some of our thoughts and combine them with some of our own thoughts. And the person's name is Carl. His name is @terrible_help. And this, I highly recommend it. Either you can find it by going to my Twitter and History of Westeros and looking for the retweets, or just going straight to @terrible_help. And the point being that most of the stuff we already covered, but it's just about the tragedy of Dany and how all these things she's overcome, and how you want to root for her because of course you want to root for her to defeat the slavers, and of course you want to root for her, and that's the real tragedy behind it all. Is even after doing all these good things, she's still on this kind of unethical goal, you know. And it's not even unethical to be queen. It's not unethical to want to be queen. It's just some of the things you have to do to get there, you know. That's where the unethical comes. If she had just been next in line and inherited it, you know, she could have done great things as a queen. I think she would be a great queen, but instead she has to suffer this life that she's had and had to grow through these things, and she's learned so many lessons. But this lesson she hasn't been able to learn. No one ever taught it to her because her family were bad rulers, you know, and she didn't really even know them. And Viserys was awful. So I don't know. It is really tragic.
But that thread, it was a series of tweets that he made because the thought was too complex for just one tweet. When he just kept responding to his own tweet, 9 tweets. It was really well thought out. It was really, I feel like he kind of covered all the bases, kind of fair about presenting all the angles, like hit different points of progression throughout the course of the story and tied it into what was happening now. And you know, kind of like as he said, and kind of like we've said, it hit a lot of things we've already talked about, but really kind of condensed them and put them together very well. It made my own thoughts clear.
It got at it addressed the parts of Dany's arc that are problematic while highlighting that most of it is great, and the thing that we've been rooting for all this time, we weren't wrong to root for those things. So it just parses the good for the unethical bits from the largely great, you know, and really cuts to the chase. It's really good. The really great point that I believe I've already said, but I want to restate, is that she still wants the throne even after she's presented with Jon, who would probably be a good king. She can't say, I'm taking the throne to make things right. That's no longer the point. She can't make that point anymore.
Yeah.
It is about her now, if she pushes her claim over Jon's, because then it's no longer, then it is about destiny and not about being a good king. So if she cares about the commoners, then the best ruler is the best ruler. It isn't necessarily her. She's in the discussion, but also, it isn't automatically her, and that's kind of how she's stated it.
There's also other issues of, even if one person is the best and another is not, there's still something to be said for the laws that exist or whatever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, even if she would be better than Jon technically still should be king. And so now maybe if Jon would be terrible and she would be great and Jon's destined to be king, well, fine, Jon doesn't get to do it. But that's not really the case. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, even if she's better, she's only a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so how much turmoil, that's been her justification this whole way, is it's her birthright. Well, wait, so if it's his birthright, that's his justification. So the other potential justification is he wouldn't be a good king. Like, even if it's Mad King Aerys' birthright, but he's not a good king. Okay, so we'll have a rebellion. But you can't make that argument against Jon. So now what is Dany standing on? Other than ego or pride or momentum.
That's why she switched to this destiny argument.
Right.
You know, and they didn't necessarily, maybe should have been a little bit more nuanced with showing that as the concept, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, I think. Okay, so let's see. Let's take a look at a few quick shots here. and then we will talk about, we'll do a mid-roll, and then get into some predictions for who might make a good ruler if it's not John or Danny. Some good thoughts on that. Okay, so let's look at this army arrayed outside King's Landing. You got Davos and Jon and Tyrion, and there's two different shots we have. One is that you can see Davos, Jon, and Tyrion and the Golden Company kind of farther away, and there's a still that I want to draw your attention to just because of the detail. There's no plotting here. It's just really nice. You get to see Harry Strickland. You can see the skulls on the hilt of his sword, and it's done in the design of the Golden Company skulls on pikes design. So that's really nice. I love that detail. Always worth taking a close look at the armor and the swords because they just do a great job of putting that in there. There's a shot of Euron's navy in the harbor. We didn't bother to pull that one. It's pretty straightforward. But there is this shot of Euron looking up in the clouds that everybody's talking about. And we even got a super chat on Monday about it. It says from Trevor England, who says, Euron looks up at the sky in fear in preview. What could scare him at this point? Only one thing, ice dragon. Well, I think regular dragon would be pretty scary too. Yeah. I love the idea, ice dragon.
I think regular dragon would be scary, but I also want to caution everyone that they're really good at grabbing the one split second where you read an emotion into it, and that's not what they're actually feeling. He could be feeling awe and not fear.
I agree that it's not necessarily fear. Yeah. But he is looking up into the clouds and going, what is that? I mean, what else could it be, right? It has to be Drogon, but this is a huge callback to history.
Be a meteor about to smash into King's Landing.
So what is this? This is a huge callback to history. Aegon the Conqueror himself, who Dany is the number one parallel for, when Aegon the Conqueror was taking Harrenhal, what did Harren the Black do? Well, he ordered every man onto the battlements. He had scorpions and spear throwers and crossbow. He's like, man the walls with all these missile weapons. Well, what did Aegon do? He went at dusk. He went really high in the sky, above the clouds where no one could see, and then he came straight down into the courtyard and just torched everything from the center. Which, if Dany does that, it would work because I guarantee there's no scorpions in, like, I don't know, in Flea Bottom. Yeah. You know, or like
they're all arrayed around the wall. She could
get high above the wall and then come down inside the city where the scorpions are just nowhere near the walls. The city's huge. I mean, she can completely bypass that. And she could also do that to the ships. She could come straight down on them. If they're too packed, if they're far apart, they could shoot at an angle at her no matter where she's coming. But if they're too tightly packed or if she comes quickly enough, she could come down and rain fire before they could get much of a shot off.
Especially if it's done in conjunction with an assault from Yara.
Ooh, yeah. Good point. I like it. So I think that we're going to see some ships burning. They didn't want to do that before, but they saved it for this episode. From Marilyn Sand. Yes, Mike Rhaegal is back. Is that foreshadowing for the show? Well, what happened to Mike Rhaegal?
Oh, you know what? As long as we're talking about this, I'm going to do my impression of Euron. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Here it comes.
Damn.
That dragon's tougher than Rhaegal. Okay, foreshadowing. You can't kill that dragon. Here's my foreshadowing. Whee! Miss. There we go. Toothpicks as scorpions. All right. Okay, let's do our quick mid-roll action, and then we'll come back with a lot more predictions and a lot more questions. Y'all really came with the questions today, which we always appreciate. Okay. Shout-outs to our Queens of Love and Beauty. That includes Erin, Lady of the Long Desert, who names Emma of Starfall, the Queen of Love and Beauty, in sight of Pods and Men. Hey, look at that. I'm wearing a House Dane shirt. Shout out to our Facebook mods, especially the ones who did the Sigils panel at Ice and FireCon and made these shirts.
This is the original design for House Dane. Yeah.
a stormtrooper with a boombox. Yeah, that is true. Accurate. Also from the depths of Flea Bottom, Lord Ken of House Hammer has declared for Queen Carrie, a Fire of the North, who recovered Dark Sister from beyond the wall. Hell yeah. And I also want to give a shout out to Mitch Bailey, who is one of our Ironborn captains. And, excuse me, I'll give his full title, Lord Mitch of House Bailey, who is captain of the Widow's Blood. His heir is Lord Ling Mason of House Bailey. Well, Lord Mitch is going in for kidney transplant, so everybody send him good thoughts and happy recovery, and we hope our fellow Westorian is back on his feet soon. He's going to be hearing these episodes during his recovery. All right, that's all the shout-outs and mid-roll we have, so we can move through that pretty quickly and get back to the questions and predictions. Okay, so let's say this debate about Jon and Dany and who would be a better queen. Dany would be a better queen. Jon would be a better king.
Good queen. Jon would be a good queen. He could do it. I'll coach him.
We have assumed that these are the only two options, which is sort of fair. But if something happens and we get to our either changing a style of government, so we talked about the throne is destroyed, there's a new style. We've talked about a lot of these different iterations of how it might go, different people dying, different people not dying. One character that is being considered around the fandom a lot all of a sudden, that makes a lot of sense, is part of the reason I wanted to reread, is because you get to his first chapter right away, is considering the possibility that the best available ruler is Brandon Stark. And the reason the best available ruler is Brandon Stark is because he doesn't have any of the flaws that any of these rulers have. He's not ambitious. He doesn't do anything for himself. He has all of human memory at his disposal for knowing what mistakes rulers can make.
How much does he do for other people? How much does he care about other people? How much does he listen to other people?
We don't know.
We don't know.
He said thank you to Mira. He said thank you.
Yeah.
After all that, like, we haven't seen Mira or Howland. You'd think he would be like, we were indebted to House Reed. We need to do something for them or something. He doesn't. I don't know.
There could be some darkness behind this. Maybe there is some personality still left in him. Maybe there's some sort of, a lot of people, including our friend who we referenced the tweet there. I've already forgotten Carl. I already forgot his Twitter name. Terrible help. Many people have pointed this out, not just him, that because George R. R. Martin is so heavily influenced by J.R.R. Tolkien, that the Iron Throne is the equivalent of the Ring. Pursuit of the Ring, especially having the Ring, ruins you. No matter who you are, no matter good your intentions are. And that's a really beautiful statement about Cersei versus Dany. That, yeah, Cersei has been awful the whole time. And of course she'd be a horrible queen. But even if she'd been great the whole time, becoming queen might make her kind of awful. And that's kind of might be what we're faced with Dany. It's like, just look at what this power does to you. Like, she's a good character, but look what it's doing to her. Think
about Stannis' quest for the throne.
It messes you up. Yeah. Like, no person is able to handle that level of power and ambition, no matter how good you are. Bran might be able to because he's not fully human. He's not. They don't have to necessarily worry about him having an heir.
That said, much like Stannis, people aren't going to rally around him.
Oh, no, they won't rally around him. Well, here's why it would happen. You're right that there's no way an army is going to put him on the throne. But what we've seen in his... Okay, this is something I really like about this theory. All the major events in A Song of Ice and Fire history, especially recent events, major events, are put there as foreshadowing, for the most part. There's definitely some exceptions. There are two great councils in the past. What's a great council? Okay, a great council is when they're not sure who should rule, and they call a vote. It's kind of like a King's Moot, where they are like, well, we don't really know who the clear heir is, so let's rather than it descending into civil war, which is so often what happens when you don't know when we have two claimants or three claimants or 5 or 10.
Or 11?
Yeah, or 11.
What about 12?
Ooh, well, 12. I hadn't thought of that.
Now think about this. 13.
No.
It's another Office reference for anyone out there is getting it.
So there's all these different, angles lined up here. And that would be how Bran gets it nominated. It would be through a great council. It wouldn't be because the realm rallies behind him. It would be because they all sit down and say who would be the best ruler. And some people say, well, what about him? And Bran the Broken. It's Bran the Rebuilder.
Who had the first chapter?
Bran. Yeah. Exactly. That's like I said, the reread. I want to read that first chapter to see if there's king foreshadowing for him.
Yeah.
And there might be, because George jammed those early chapters with endgame foreshadowing. Some of which was no longer lines up, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, at one point in the 1993 manuscript letter thing, he thought that Jaime Lannister was going to be king, and so there's foreshadowing for Jaime.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that fits this theory really well. Imagine the irony if Bran becomes king after Jaime, who's trying to murder his way to the throne, doesn't kill Bran but tries to, and that's the guy who takes the throne from him. That would be really ironic, right? That no longer works because Jaime isn't that character. Jaime is not just this guy who murders his way to the throne. Jaime's nothing like that. So, but you could see where that still would fit, even the original outline. So that's part of why I like it a lot.
As long as you're reading that first chapter, look for foreshadowing of Bran being the Night King also.
Now, how else does this work out? Let's think about these great councils. Okay, so the first great council was called by Jaehaerys himself. He was still alive. He was the king. He was just old. And so that one may be the best example. The second great council came 70 years ago. And who presided over it? The three-eyed raven, Blood Raven. And the reason he was able to do it is because he was a really powerful hand of the king. He had been hand of the king for 25 years. For two different kings, he was a powerful figure. And so when he's like, look, we need to call a great council because there's no clear heir here, people listened. Now, who could do that? Tyrion. Tyrion could do that. Tyrion could call the great council. He could say, look, we all need to do... And by the way, another character, a character who was on both sides of the war in the Dance of the Dragons, when they finally sat down to decide who would be king. It wasn't a great council. It was just, they had what was called the Hour of the Wolf. And the Hour of the Wolf was Cregan Stark, this young powerful northern lord, coming down and dispensing justice on everyone, cutting people's heads off, telling them they all did bad things. And one of the heads cut off was Larys, the Master of Whispers, who changed sides multiple times during the war. So who would this character be? Who would who would Cregan Stark in this scenario? Sansa, the Iron Justice the person who has become very justice, treason, this, that, very, very kind of harsh, but correct in a lot of ways. It just lines up so well for this endgame. You got Sansa as Cregan, you got Tyrion as the Blood Raven who brings everybody together to talk about it.
Varys is Larys.
Varys is Larys, and the Broken King, after the Dance of the Dragons, after this huge battle between two factions of Targaryens, is Aegon III, who I used to think had, and still do, think has lots of Jon vibes. But considering him as a Bran character, it works really well too. Okay, so here's Aegon III. Grew up, hardly ever talked, was depressed all the time, stared at the sky a lot, which is something that skin changers do. Wore all black, which is kind of a Jon vibe. And had no sense of humor. Also kind of a Jon vibe, but now a Bran vibe too. And his name was the Broken King. And Bran's Bran the Broken. So he's also the Dragonbane. The dragons died out during his reign, and that's Jon vibes partly. And he rode a dragon, and the dragon was killed under him, which might be Jon vibes too. So, woo.
There's a lot.
All right. I just had a lot.
I don't think it's a silly theory, but I don't think it's happening in the show.
Yeah, it's no slam dunk. It fits, but it's another one of the things that's I don't know about that.
For one, it's just a lot to happen in the next two episodes, and
I agree.
And it's again,
it avoids this issue of Jon or Dany being on the throne at the end. It's people are at each. It's well, what if it's neither?
Well, by the way, I want to point out, even if it's neither Dany or Jon, it doesn't mean we have to find some other person for it to be. It might just be no one. There just might not be an Iron Throne at the end, and the Seven Kingdoms might just fall apart.
Yeah, that's true. That could happen. Absolutely.
Which is another, I'm going to say, prediction of sorts that I have. I think we're going to get this moment where we kind of scroll through the state of things, and we'll see Bronn and Highgarden and
never
Tyrion and
never
King's Landing,
happen,
or not King's Landing, but Casterly Rock, Sansa and Winterfell, and we'll just see the Yara and the Iron Islands. We'll just see the lords of the different kingdoms as we close the story out, without necessarily anyone on the Iron Throne, or maybe someone on the Iron Throne, and it's like this. I don't know how to say this meaningless victory. They're King of the Ashes. You know what I mean? They'll be on the Iron Throne, but there will be no kingdoms united around them, and literally ashes on the floor, etc.
Cool.
I think something similar to what we've talked about, which is Iron Throne destroyed. No one's ruling the Seven Kingdoms. They're not united. The realm is fractured into a bunch of different, not necessarily even the Seven Kingdoms at that point. And that they show all of this. Like how Westeros is left through one of those montage things, kind of,
They also might all be in these positions of power and just be sad. Gendry all alone in the Stormlands, Arya, the Hulk music of that sad music. She'll be riding down the street.
Speaking of Gendry, I saw a great pun for him. There was a picture of him being rejected by Arya, and that's Gen Dry. And then when they're about to have sex, that's Gen Wet. It's a little better visually, but it still works. Some more questions. A super chat from Power Scissor. Thank you. Also from Lisa Asta. Herb Thompson says Drogon survives and devours Sansa for trying to be the new Littlefinger. Now, that's a twist. How does this little tiny dragon eat Sansa, though? Look at this thing. How does that happen? From Philip Wolf, 2 super chats saying Sansa is middle finger. Love it. That's great. She does give the middle finger to a lot of people, proverbially, and it's so usually deserved. I love it. That's great. Ahmed Ali says, "Who do you think the Prince of Dorne is? A Dane?" Well, it could be. I love that with the old Dane shirt representing.
You talked about this a bit on Wednesday as well, about the laughable idea of Darkstar being the Prince of Dorne.
Yeah, they could just do that to needle us book readers. Like, yep, we'll name this guy Gerald Dane. How about that? We'll call him Gerald Dane. It's like, what? Darkstar, making him the ruler? Damn it. From Chelsea Roberts. In episode 4, during the council meeting / travel planning scene, it looked like Jon moved Dany's token to go with him on the King's Road, and Grey Worm moved it back. Why? If he doesn't want to be with her? I didn't notice that. It's hard to respond to that question because it is weird that they didn't travel together. Like, that would be maybe a way for them to kind of work this out. Like, talk. If they traveled together, they could maybe talk some of these problems out. But they traveled separately. And one part of that might be that, if you're being really cynical, having Jon with Dany's army makes sense, because there's no way Jon's going to, like, take control of Dany's army. He's the Unsullied, and Dothraki will not follow Jon. They, like, other lords might, for sure. Like, in fact, it's almost likely that they would, given certain circumstances. But the Unsullied and Dothraki are Dany's, 100%, like, period. I don't think there's no other leader they would follow, which, by the way, is a problem, too. If she dies and they're still around, what do they do with them, I
can imagine if she dies, like, in the midst of the battle for King's Landing, they'll keep fighting the battle for King's Landing.
Okay. They may not even know she's dead.
Right.
Although, if they see her dragon go down, they might worry.
And I also think that that's something we're just not going to get in a show. But I would love to see more characters from those forces and how some of them may be won over by Jon. I remember back in, I guess it was season 7, when Jon was at Dragonstone. And I think it was Missandei, God, it's killing me, I can't remember, but told Jon, talk to Dothraki. They love her. Go get with their opinion, to see why they love her so much, I thought we were going to get that. I thought Jon, they were going to get a good conversation between Jon and some Dothraki, and it didn't happen. I hope it happens in the books.
That would be good. Now, I like that Chelsea mentioned Grey Worm here, because it's a good segue. I brought him up at the beginning as a character that, we wrongly predicted his death. But now it's time to talk about what he's all about. I mean, part of the fun of Game of Thrones is that there's so many characters to talk about. And Grey Worm, well, it may not be fun to talk about the state he's in, but he deserves some attention, and we want to kind of figure out what's up with him. I know him dying in this battle, going out like a hero, makes some sense. It might be more tragic if he survives and has to live with, especially if Dany doesn't. Then he's not even with her. He doesn't even have his queen to stand by and guard or whatever he wants to do, if that's even what he wants to do, which didn't sound like he wanted to do that when Missandei was around, because he wanted to go to Nath with her. But now, like, obviously that's out the door, so yeah. I don't know what he wants to do. But he's very mad. We're also told that Jacob Anderson, he's got all these names, like Ashaya said, said that even his character faces conflict this season. Even this character has, that's the thing, that all the characters have to face, like, tough decisions. And even that comes for Grey Worm. And I'm really kind of wonder what that could matter, how that could play out. Like, is his loyalty to Dany tested? That would be, like, the ultimate thing now that Missandei is out of the picture. Because, like, if it was a choice between Missandei and Dany, well, that you could see that. But now, like, what would the choice be now? Like, good versus right versus wrong, Or is he just hyper loyal to Dany because of who she is and what she's done for him? I don't know. What are your thoughts on Grey Worm? Love to hear it.
He might have more. He might have a list like Arya's now.
Ooh.
And number 1 on his list is probably the Mountain. Number 2 is Cersei, something like that. A quick thought, by the way, is that I wish I had thought to prep Shea to bring this image up, but there was one shot of Cersei, mountain in the background. And I was just thinking about the idea of how he's just like a shadow to her. They're almost one and the same.
Casts a very large shadow.
Yeah. And I can't envision, I'm like, as we've been talking, I started to envision how Cersei might die. I told you I had a hard time seeing how it would happen on screen. I can see this collection of people who want to kill Cersei and or the Mountain encircling them. You know, you got Arya, of course, Dany, Sandor, now Grey Worm, just all standing around Cersei and the Mountain. Like, who's gonna get to do it? It might be like a Julius Caesar moment where they all land a blow. You know?
Wow, that could be it. And yeah, like for example, what if one thing that could be conflicting for Grey Worm if Dany backs down?
Et tu, Jamie?
Yeah, et tu, Jamie.
Can I say something? If anyone's really bummed about the Grey Worm and Missandei stuff, look up, I don't know, Grey Worm Missandei Running Man Challenge or something like that. That should find it for you. And it's just them behind the scenes doing that Running Man Challenge, you know. Aziz, you want to sing it for us?
At night, I think of you. I want to be your
Do we have 1,000 viewers?
Baby. If
yeah, you do. So that does this count? No, anyways.
But you know all the lyrics and everything.
I mean, Aziz and I, no joke, have spent a lot of time watching those videos and listening to that song.
And laughing.
And yeah, tears go down my face when I watch those videos. So yeah, just a little lighthearted something because that was sad.
That'll bring us back onto the fun side of things.
Right after that dance, she got killed.
So, all right. Let's talk about Clegane Bowl. We talked about the Mountain just now, so that's a good segue. It seems to be happening, but the circumstances could be really interesting because, man, one thing there's going to be at King's Landing is a lot of fire. And that's even without this potential wildfire explosion, which could be like, whoa, well, that's even more fire. That's even scarier. But yeah, he's gonna really have to face that and his brother, and that could be very compelling because they've done a pretty good job with Sandor in some ways. Some of his characterization versus the book is a little shallow, but this part that they focused on, the fire part, his fear of fire, they've done a good job with. I think they've remembered that and played it out well. It's been compelling. So considering they've condensed his character into brother hating, fire fearing, it makes sense that these would be the two major elements in play for him to face. But he's got Arya with him, and that could you know, my headcanon for Arya and the Mountain is that Arya, because Arya wants to kill the Mountain too. Her two remaining names on her list are Arya and Cersei, and it really seems like Sandor. I'm sorry, I said Arya and Cersei. I meant she doesn't want to kill herself. Cersei and the Mountain, and well, I can kind of see like her helping him kill the Mountain, but he gets to deal the killing blow, and he gets a little mad. He's like, "You interfered with me." He's like, "Hey, he messed me too. I at least get to stab him in the leg or something." Yeah. He's like, "Well, actually, okay, that is fair. You know, all right. Now we're done." Yeah,
I could see them sneaking in through the tunnels. You know, battle.
She knows the tunnels.
Euron
that's right.
ambushing the fleet, trying to carry Jon's forces across from Dragonstone. You know, Yara showing up to save the fleet. And in the meantime, Sandor and Arya sneaking through the tunnels.
By the way, we're thinking of what face she could steal to get close to Cersei. Qyburn.
Yeah.
We named Jamie. That's obvious, but Qyburn.
Did you guys name Bernadette before?
Bernadette. Oh, her handmaiden. We did not.
Yeah.
Your look on your face.
Like, who?
Bernadette.
I thought you were making a joke. No, Bernadette is the handmaiden.
The one that
always
changed
has
her
the same
hairstyle
hair.
to Cersei's.
Yeah, that's a good call.
You know,
if that character were more prominent, or what about Murray, the sex worker?
That is her too.
She doesn't have any reason to be near Cersei.
No,
but.
Bernadette's very close to her though.
Anthony Vasquez says, I think we'll see a similar fight between Oberyn and the Mountain with Grey Worm. That could be kind of cool.
It would be cool, but I don't think so. There's too many people in line. You know, maybe that's what will happen. Maybe the Mountain will chop down one after another. Maybe he'll chop down
Grey Worm.
Oh,
man. And then Sandor will take him out.
Chop down, maybe, Jamie. We saw that foreshadowed, you know. I don't know how Bronn is still, maybe he doesn't have anything to do with this. I don't know, but he did make the comment about 20 good men will get him into the Vale. Like,
by the way, I meant, you know what, you brought up Bronn and for Highgarden, and I forgot to make a point. I keep coming back to that talk at the beginning of season 7, where Bronn and Jaime are on the towers looking down at the Dothraki, or looking down at the Unsullied, and it's this crude conversation about not having cocks. But it was a really meaningful conversation. Like, because it was getting at what do people fight for? What is their motivate? Why do men fight in armies? You know, and Bronn really nailed it. He's like, well, if you don't have a family and you don't have a cock, what is there to fight for? And I'm thinking about that for Grey Worm. Like, he doesn't have a lover. He doesn't have the ability to make his own family. Like, that is tough to think about.
Revenge right now.
Yes,
He's
absolutely.
got revenge to fight for.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That is the thing.
But
which
after
is,
that,
which is why we're
why
like,
is he
what else
staying
does
in
he have?
Westeros? You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So that's kind of tragic.
like
I just want to say, by the way, there's some people that are like, his story was already tragic, or he already didn't have anything to live, whatever. There's things that people have said about the fact that he doesn't have, equipment down there. Like, yeah, but he's still a person and has a life and goals. And like,
Of course.
even after Missandei's dead and he's like, can't start a family, maybe he like takes some time and he realizes, hey, there's a lot of injustice in the world, and then he becomes the dark worm or something like that.
That would be great. That would be a wonderful way
He
to
doesn't
see it.
have to have a sexual equipment or urges to be valid in a person.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to have it. But the fact is that is what drives a huge percentage of all people, is to end that way.
So
They
it's
have
hard
that-
for people to
if
understand,
he
which is
has
why I
that
wanted
instinct,
to give
he can't fulfill it.
a mention that
Yeah.
like he doesn't have to just like, oh, he has nothing he could ever live for now.
right. And also, you could have family even past. You don't necessarily have to be castrated to lose your sexual desires, right? Like,
He hasn't.
a
Yeah, he hasn't
70-year-old
lost
woman
his- yeah.
still could care about her children, and maybe she's not going to go into battle for them, I guess, but maybe she would if she could.
Yeah.
And again, another frustration I have is that I feel like Grey Worm, if you just think about it, his character should have close bonds with many other characters. There are many other Unsullied that he would be working with and training with and counseling and but we just see none of that. And he would still fight for them. He would
Yeah,
still care
yeah.
about them and have friendships and bonds
Definitely,
beyond
yeah.
like
It's not like he
Danny
just goes
and
off to
two
die.
people in a world, right?
Yeah, it's not like that their conclusions were right. That hey, if you don't have a cock, anything to fight for. It was that's the point about calling it crude.
right.
It's
right.
the other questions it raises. It's interesting. It's like, well, if you really want a family and can't have one, what are your answers? What are your options? And Shay's right. There are other options, but some people see life more simply. And if that main thing is removed, that having no family is not an option, it can leave you pretty bereft, I suppose.
I also want to point out people in the chat saying Grey Worm could adopt.
Absolutely, great. Adoption is
Yeah.
it's not an official thing, but it's
In
it's
Westeros
real
or
enough.
Essos, but it's real enough. Anyways,
be a mentor figure to somebody. Yeah, he could be.
He could have a squire.
He could have a dunk. Yeah, he could go find himself a little dunk.
He could have a
Yeah.
Theon. Works on a lot of levels.
So let's talk about a little more about Jaime. Though we talked a lot about him, but I want to talk about not Jaime specifically, but Brienne. We talked about this a bit before, and whether she can appear in this battle, because let's be honest, even if Jaime's words cut her to the chase, which they probably did, her character is not the I give up type, not even a little. I mean, she's a pick herself back up and fight kind of character. So, do you think she might show up at King's Landing? You think she might follow?
I think she might, but I think it's not as simple as, even if whether Jaime was intending to or not, if his words keep her back, like, he doesn't love me anyway, screw him, I'm not going to help. Even if she's like, no, I am going to help, he didn't really mean it. Even if he did mean it, I don't care, I can't let this go. She is, I think, more committed to Sansa. She's more committed to Sansa. So it's more a question of whether or not Sansa would allow or insist on her going than whether she wants to. Does that make sense?
I agree. And I think Sansa would let her, because Sansa's not the kind of like, no, I need
And
you
I
here
think-
to guard me. But Podrick,
But I don't think she would encourage her. I don't think she
Right.
would tell
She
her.
wouldn't
to-
encourage
Right.
it.
I don't think Sansa.
Yeah, I
I don't
agree.
think Sansa would encourage it. I don't think
it's
she would
unhealthy.
order it. I think she might detect it. Brienne might even ask for it. However, I'm not going to see any of that. We're just not going to see any winner. I don't think we're going to see any of them in this episode. That's my prediction. We just
Okay.
don't. The opportunity won't come up. So.
All right.
I don't believe Brienne's going to show up at the last minute to save the day.
Well, I don't think she's going to save the day. I think she might show up.
To be involved.
But Jaime, I think Jaime's going to die, and she's not going to save him. But we shall see. All right, last questions, and then we're done for the day. It's almost 4. We appreciate y'all sticking with us, or anyone who tuned in late, coming in to catch the end here. Still time to get in a few questions. From Fred Targaryen's Uncle Daddy. I appreciate you guys and your positivity, but is there anyone left you want to see die? Throw us haters a bone.
Sure, I would like to see the Mountain die. I would like to see Cersei die. I would like to see Euron die. I would like to see Qyburn die.
Don't want to see Qyburn die.
I want to see Qyburn die. I mean,
I want to see him continue to be hand, whoever the new king is. I want them to recognize how great Qyburn was and want them on their side.
You like Qyburn way too much. You need to read the books further, and you'll be like, "This is the person I've been supporting."
Do you know that Qyburn? Do you remember? We have a mutual friend named Adrian who passed many years ago. Qyburn's chapters of Qyburn gave her legitimate nightmares. Like she had nightmares about Qyburn, and she was an MMA fighter.
Yeah, he's pretty freaky. I mean, in the show,
I haven't got there yet. We'll see.
He's
we'll
real
see
bad in
how
the books.
you
Yes,
change
he's
your
a torturer.
opinions.
He's
Yeah.
really bad.
I don't like Qyburn. He freaks me out too. So yes,
It's one of the more jarring opinions that you could have, but it makes sense because
I have had
read,
multiple nightmares with Gregor Clegane with the Mountain,
who was made by Qyburn.
And so made by Qyburn, and specifically that version of him, the Kyborg, that I've had nightmares about.
Yeah,
so.
the Mountain was bad before Qyburn.
It was bad before
right?
him,
Very
and
true.
afterwards he's even more freaky and terrifying to me. So
he might
I will
be
feel
not as bad
good
now.
with him dead.
Yeah, like if you think about what we've seen the Mountain do, worse before Qyburn than
he was
after.
worse.
And now he may have done
agree.
worse things that we haven't seen, and what we've seen from Qyburn, like I think the worst thing that we've seen him do is kill Pycelle. That's the most violent thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's maybe encouraged Cersei. He's been on the wrong side or whatever, but we haven't actually seen him do an evil, malicious, mean thing. We've only seen him be ingenious. We've only seen him.
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not 100% sure about it, but I can't think of anything. I'm bringing it up. If anyone's got something, tell me,
I mean, I think serving Cersei is evil. I don't think
Right,
that's
true.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
I mean, he literally has
escape.
had women tied up in his dungeon and tortured them.
We didn't see that in the show.
I mean, in the show, Ilaria and Tyene, like that was all because that's what Cersei wanted, but like Qyburn was part of that.
Did we see him in those scenes?
He was there, yeah.
I guess. She did say he made the poison.
Yeah.
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 So I guess
Anyway.
he's about on par with Ilaria. He's about as evil as Ilaria. He's about as evil as Varys and Pycelle and
No.
It depends on
I
what you
still
think
don't
their
agree.
motivations are.
Varys, I think yes. You can go. I think you have the case with Varys, but I'm not sure about Pycelle. And anyway.
Pycelle was
it's a
on board
philosophical
with
question.
murdering Dany, I don't know.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
he
but
was.
Pycelle had the same little
But
birds
so
with
would-
daggers that Qyburn
would
got,
Qyburn. So would Qyburn have
Yeah,
been okay with that.
yeah.
Like, that's not a differentiator, right?
Okay, yeah. I should be clear, not arguing that he's a good, righteous character, but he is a
You
savvy.
wanted him to be someone's hand. though.
I'll hear a couple things. Some people say what he did to the Mountain was also immoral.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You could,
I
you could
do.
say it. I think it is. Like if you say that he has some amount of control over him, or it depends on what you think.
You've made us a slave automaton. I don't think that's moral. I don't think there's anything good about that.
I'm unsure. Like if you make a robot, is it immoral? Like
It's different.
It can be. It can be immoral. There's
can.
arguments
It
about
definitely
whether
can.
or
I mean,
not it's-
right. I bring that up because I
If you
think
make
it could
a
be,
robot
like,
that can feel pain and you design it to feel pain,
Yeah.
and suffer constantly, I mean, that's evil.
is having a baby immoral? You made a person
can
that can
be,
feel
yeah,
pain.
it
No.
can
I
be.
meant you design them to be in pain.
Yeah.
Like
okay.
which
yeah.
the Mountain may very well be in constant pain,
Yeah.
which he
Yeah.
was when he died.
He was.
Hey,
Yeah,
well, maybe
it's not like
Qyburn's
he's
working
getting-
to
yeah.
alleviate the Mountain's pain. He's trying so hard.
We got a chat
The
from
strangest
Joe
Qyburn
Magician
defense.
said, "What's up, guys? Just woke up from a nap. Am I still dreaming, or is Sean saying Qyburn is a good dude?
Not a good dude, a successful dude.
Yeah, I don't deny
A
that he's
valuable
successful.
dude.
He's certainly
Very
successful. He's
He is
certainly
Cersei's
successful.
MVP. Yeah. Okay, so I want to see him die. That's one. I'll agree. And the Mountain.
Yeah, I agree.
And who is another one?
Okay, I said yeah. Some other. I mean, I'm thinking of King's Landing.
None of these are very, very. Oh, Robert Aaron. Even though he's just a kid,
You want to see him die, really?
kind of do.
Yeah, I have a weird. I'm looking at this in a weird way, but I want. Again, like I have a hard time even expressing these words, but I want Davos to die. I want Tyrion to die.
Yeah, but that's not
I
the
want the
question.
stakes to be
This is you
real,
want
you know?
them to die because you don't like them.
Okay.
That's
okay.
the question. No reframing the
Well-
question. All right, let's move on. Philip Wolf asks, what has been your favorite all-time moment from the series so far, and what would you like to see most before it all ends? Thanks for the stream. My favorite all-time moment from the series so far. It's hard to say. Recent moment would be Jenny's song and Brienne's knighting, which were kind of tied together. I call that one moment. It's fair to call that two moments, but they were so close together. I'll have to think about, while you guys are answering, maybe I could think of a different one from a prior season, but
I have a couple, and I haven't thought about this enough to be very
I think
sure.
that this is a better question, that we should grab the question and put it in our
last
our
episode?
next another
Yeah.
episode and think about it over a week and just grab it like we've done
Okay.
before.
Good point.
So Philip Wolf, they're teasing you with our thoughts of Jenny's song being up there for sure. But I think, and we're going to address what we want to see most before it all ends. So we'll address this more in a future episode.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about some of the things we wanted to see before it all ends, like certain deaths and certain characterizations happening. I would like to see I want a montage or something at the end to see all the characters that we might, like Tormund, see show us where they're at, give us this is where these characters are at now. And it would be awesome if that extended to some characters we really haven't seen in a while, though I really don't think so. They're not going to give us a Dario moment. Michael, the real world logistics of getting Michael Huisman, a successful actor, in to do that one scene is a little tricky. So it's hard to ask for that. But hey, this is what I'd like to see. And so I don't care about what's legitimate or not. That's what I want to see. I admit it's not likely at all.
I would like to see them come up with a new form of government. That's
Okay.
what I like to see. I don't know how it'll go, if they'll sleep on Iron Throne, but I at least want a conversation where they consider electing a leader.
Okay, so let's say if they do the Bran thing, would that count as a new form of government? If he's a god king instead of a human monarch?
I suppose, yeah, especially because we
maybe
gotta
not
assume
the
he
kind of
won't
change
have
you
like a
want.
son to be the heir.
It's
Yeah.
not like Bran is immortal. He's not in his tree.
No,
in
but
terms
he
of
is
a
a
god
god. I didn't say
king.
he was immortal, but he's a god king because he has all these godlike powers.
Okay, I just tend
Yeah.
to think of god kings as having extended life.
Oh, he does probably have an
spans.
extended life. It probably just isn't immortality.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably. Also, part of Bran being king, I assume, would mean that the next king won't be his oldest son. They'll have to come up with some different way to pick the next king, which is kind of what I want, really. I would be okay having a king, right? That is the leader for life. They don't necessarily get reelected every 4 years. They're the ruler for life. However, the next king isn't their oldest son, just some random arbitrary person that might be good or not.
Go back to the King's Moot situation.
Exactly. Have a new way to figure out who the new leader is whenever the current leader's gone.
Because we know the King's Moot went really well for the Greyjoys in the book.
No one manipulated that at all.
No, it's fine. And we all know that the U.S. and other government systems have no flaws. We don't have bad people elected all the time.
No one bad ever gets elected.
Yeah.
Never.
No.
That had no effect on me whatsoever. Alan Carstairs asks, if the throne gets destroyed, what happens to the Iron Bank? Can you ask the guys? Yeah, so the throne is supposedly whoever the Iron Bank's going to make, whoever takes the throne, pay off these debts. Well, what if that's a good question. What happens if there is no throne to pay these debts? Who would they charge these debts
Or if
to?
they don't acknowledge it. What if Danny's like, Cersei borrowed money from you. I didn't borrow money from you.
You did not support me.
Yeah.
Why on earth would she pay them except if she was worried about them taking it? I don't know.
That's when theoretically they threatened to send the Faceless Men after her.
Yeah. I feel like that's too big an issue for the show to possibly
There's no way they
address.
could resolve it. This is more a theoretical thing. Yeah.
We get at most a line of dialogue that envoy shows up.
I feel like you see this at the ending of the show. Tycho Nestor shows up to be like, the Iron Bank is glad that things worked out for you, Your Grace. Whatever.
Yeah.
One sentence. He's there. He's at the council. Or if you get what you want, Sean.
She
and
rolls
there's,
her eyes like, oh boy.
Whatever. that he's there.
Yeah.
From Shadow Fox. Just love listening to you guys. I enjoyed the book you contributed to. And of course, Shay is the best. Well, thank you for purchasing The Thrones Effect, which Sean has a copy of sitting right here in front. Yeah, you can pick that up from Amazon. You can go directly to our website and get a copy. And we appreciate you mentioning it, Shadow Fox. Lil Angry Irishman says, any chance of a time jump by a couple months and a baby? For the last episode, yeah, I could see that maybe happening. For this, yeah, definitely, there's a possibility there. But in fact, it's even maybe slightly likely.
Between Gilly, the potential of Danny being pregnant, maybe it's too late for
wanting
that.
to
even.
show
I
the
feel like too much
fates.
time's passed. But.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, if you, and especially if we have an episode 6, like an ending montage, and time has passed, then the people we've named that are technically possible are Gilly, Danny, Arya, and Brienne. Are the 4 people that you could be like, oh wow, they have a baby now, or they're pregnant, or
That's
something.
true.
You don't have to see the baby was born. You would just see that they are pregnant.
Yeah, just get.
I have to say, I know it's the whole a dream of spring and all that, but I'm so tired of is this person pregnant or is this person pregnant? Yeah, Gilly's pregnant. If the actress, I guess, is pregnant in real life or something like that. I don't know. That's what people were saying.
Oh.
I thought that's what people were saying early in the season, and then she actually turned out to be pregnant in the show. So I was like, I guess that worked out. But I really don't want Arya or Brienne or Danny to have been pregnant.
Right on. Okay.
Tired of
Couple more questions. What can't we expect? It'll be Mayhem Incorporated. Will Bronn finally get his castle and beautiful wife? Yeah, maybe we can't expect that. No, I think he might get something. I feel like Bronn might be a survivor. I think he might be the that. See, another uncouth bit of wisdom he dropped was that point with when he's like, when Jaime's like, oh, you never get this noble seat. He's like, pretty much all those noble seats started with some scumbag like me. And he's totally right. I mean, not all of them started that way, but he's right that a lot of them started with some awful person doing awful things who stopped doing awful things once they got that seat.
I think it was at our Wednesday stream that someone brought up this tying potentially into the prequel show with Lauren the Clever.
Joe Buckley said that.
Yeah, which is a really brilliant idea. I don't know if they're being that clever, but obviously we think we will see Lan. And, the idea is that, Lan winkled the Casterlys out of Casterly Rock. And there's a lot of theories about that, from marriage and trickery and whatever. There's a lot of theories about it, but just the idea of that theme coming up here again with Bronn.
It wasn't noble deeds that earned him Casterly Rock.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't fighting for justice
trickery.
Yeah.
But it wasn't also just slaughtering people, it doesn't seem.
Probably not, yeah. Maybe he killed someone off screen and was like, oh, how did that happen? But yeah, you're right. It certainly wasn't just abject, slaughtering his way to this high seat. That definitely not that. So that is, that's pretty cool. I thought that this is one of the things that makes me enjoy Bronn, even though a lot of people don't like him. It's just that some of the topics he raises are actually quite interesting from a philosophical standpoint, and they bring up things from the books that are interesting, like we didn't get to talk about on Wednesday, but I wanted to talk because we ran out of time, but talk about how during the Dance of the Dragons, some of the guys who ended up riding dragons were peasants, because they got desperate to find dragon riders. So they tried to find people who maybe had the touch of Targaryen blood or whatever that allowed them to ride a dragon. And some of these guys, as soon as they got this power, they turned into real awful people. And they probably weren't that good to begin with, but it was just showing you the power corrupts them. And a lot of these guys were just up jumped like regular soldiers, or one guy's a blacksmith's bastard, and they were dragon riders all of a sudden. And it's like, whoa. So that's kind of like Bronn getting Highgarden, In fact, one of those guys wanted Highgarden.
Yeah.
One of those dragon riders wanted Highgarden. So it definitely reminded us of that because it was the exact same castle. So that's, we'll have to spend some time on that as a standalone topic in an episode when we have more time for it. I keep skipping it because it was supposed to be Wednesday and we don't have time for it here, but it really does deserve more attention. It's an interesting subject for sure. Also relates to the Golden Company. The Golden Company in the books are sellswords descended from Westerosi exiles who lost their family seats due to certain civil wars or other things.
Treason.
Blackfire rebellions in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Treason, yeah. And so a lot of them are fourth generation guys who want that family seat back. But now they're just a sellsword. They're a hired killer. And that's who's going to get these seats back. And that could happen in the books because the Golden Company is making is scoring some victories early on, in the slower book style campaign where they take castle here, castle there.
I've heard people speculate on whether or not the Golden Company turns on Cersei.
Yeah.
And, maybe Harry Strickland gets Harrenhal or something.
Yeah, if they're losing and they're like, why should we lose?
Do you hate Harry Strickland or something? You want him to get Harrenhal?
Harry Hall. It's his name.
Danny would give him last pick,
Harry Hall. Yeah, it's a natural fit. Okay, so from Johnny of House Harrison, Q&A, what do you picture as the final scene of Game of Thrones? Well, the first scene was Beyond the Wall, and I don't think we'll get that again, but it could be. It could be the epilogue.
I think we get opening up Blue Eyes.
Okay.
That's what I think.
That would be cool. I definitely can't argue against that. It's not my pick, but I definitely think it's a good pick. I think it's I think it might be a shot if there is still a throne and someone's on it, like Bran or Jon, that's the final shot. But it could be it could be something like what you said. I think your pick is good, but I just want to say something different.
Yeah, I think your pick is also good. Someone on an Iron Throne, but that person, it'll be tragic. That person will be.
They're not going to be happy about
sad.
it.
Yeah, they'll be head in their hand.
If the show had done that, the Iron Throne is deadly, just sitting on, like, you cut yourself, like a lot of people cut themselves on it, they would show that. Maybe that would be a cool way to show someone to cut themselves on the Iron Throne.
Okay,
be like a nice.
So I should say mine now.
Yes.
I think it'll. Okay, I'll name 3 potential ones, and maybe they'll be in like succession. I think we'll see. I like your idea, Sean, of like Direwolf Beyond the Wall, Dragon in Valyria, then Iron Throne just destroyed. So I think which one of those 3 is the actual last one, and I think we'll see those 3 in the final shots as part of it.
If they show the Iron Throne destroyed, they could re-show the destroyed wall.
Yeah, maybe that too, but I just like, again, me coming back to that idea of an ending montage, allowing them to show all of these things.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It fits into a montage really well.
Just showing that shot, which, and I even your idea of Blue Eyes opening, I like, just because I'm very much behind the idea that this is all cyclical. The idea that this has happened in the past means that it has to happen in the future. They didn't just defeat it forever, I think. So I would like to see a hint of that somewhere. So I like the idea of that.
Combine the ideas. Bran's Blue Eyes opening on the throne. Oh, man. Shit. He looks down at his wrist and scratches it. And the Night King's mark glows. And it's like, so he's not actually the new Night King, but he is the king. And he's got blue eyes. That would be close enough. That would probably, people would claim victory
he's
for
the
their
new
theory.
Day King.
Fighter of the Night King.
Bran learning seated karate.
Thomas Pappas, final question. Totally off topic, but also really curious what Sean, Aziz, and Shay's all-time favorite movies are. If picking one is too hard, 2 or 3 will do. You can save this till the very end. It's super random. Well, we did save it till the very end.
We did, and I've got my answers, and Sean's probably upset that he didn't see this question and hasn't been thinking about it.
What are your top 3 on Flick Chart right now?
Well, yeah, I can tell you if I'm pinned to pick one, Star Wars, New Hope. That's my number 1 all-time favorite movie, and I think my number 2. I'm gonna, if I'm not careful, I'll go on talking about the nature of list making and how I pick favorite movies. But I think number 2, I picked The Princess Bride, and I'll say both those big reasons for both of those. Just I saw them when I was a kid. I kind of grew up with them, but also it's worth noting that they fit the hero's journey. You know, Joseph Campbell. Yeah, it's talked a lot about how through different cultures there's been this commonality and mythology of the hero's journey, and the similarities are kind of what define humanity, and the differences are what define different cultures. But you could see this story all over the place, from Luke Skywalker to Frodo to Jesus or whatever.
Got 2, Sean.
Yeah,
you got 2. You're gonna name a 3rd,
but
or
that pattern that they go through.
Yes. Are you gonna name a 3rd, or you go with 2?
Go with 2.
Okay. Do you have answers, Aziz, or should I go ahead?
You can go ahead.
My favorite all-time comedy movie of all time is Wet Hot American Summer. I love anything, David Wayne, Michael Showalter, but in particular, Wet Hot American Summer, all the series. It's hard to compare it. It's not fair because it has a bunch of TV series. I love Star Wars, and I want to name Star Wars just as a whole, but when it comes down to naming an individual movie, it becomes very hard for me. For reasons I won't get into. So I'm just going to say Star Wars as a whole for that. And then for my other spot, I really want to say one of my Jim Henson favorites. It would come down to Labyrinth versus The Dark Crystal. I think it's Labyrinth, but it's tight. It's close. But I would want to have that represented. So those would be 3 of my favorite films, favorite franchises, styles. I don't know.
Cool.
I think I do want to name a 3rd, especially because my first 2 are very similar in a lot of ways. Amelie.
Okay, perfect.
I think that might be my 3rd.
And you got one with a female lead in it.
Yeah.
Checks off that box. Yeah. So for me, well, it's difficult. I struggle to make top 10 lists and to pick favorites in general. But my favorite all-time apocalyptic dragon film is Reign of Fire. So that's number 1. The number 1 all-time post-apocalyptic dragon film is definitely Reign of Fire. But if picking a favorite movie, I think I would go with Monty Python and the Life of Brian, or Monty Python and the Meaning of Life. I watched both those movies relentlessly also as a kid, and I can quote them almost exclusively all the way through, and I just still find them hilarious. So
not Holy Grail.
I love Holy Grail, but I think it's 3rd out of those 3.
Yeah.
Partly because it's more ubiquitous and it's just been done over and over, and everyone quotes that one.
Yeah.
So that wore off a little bit. It's still hilarious. I would watch it again in a second at the drop of a hat. But yeah.
This was our all-time favorite movies, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just can't help but look forward and think about in 20 years what if there's any movies nowadays that will be in my all-time favorite.
Yeah, they might.
And I'm going to call it
might
right
land.
now.
Yeah.
I think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse will be my all-time favorite animated
Ooh.
film and will be up there in this pantheon that I'll be naming, but I don't feel comfortable naming it as an all-time favorite movie because it hasn't been all-time.
You got to let it pass.
But
You got to have that.
I'm going to say it out there. I'll have this video. I'll go back to it and be like, I called it.
That is a fantastic movie. No doubt. No doubt. I'm sure that if I thought about it more, there'd be some other ones, and maybe you too.
I could tell you my newest, highest movie, which is still pushing 10 years old, is No Country for Old Men.
Ooh, okay. That's a good one. A very good one.
All right. That's a great way to wrap it up then, eh?
Okay, thank you for coming, everybody. We really appreciate us sticking with us for these last few episodes and whatever comes beyond. As always, thanks to Ashea for running so many things at once and for weighing in a lot today. Also, thanks to everyone who came and watched live, everyone who liked and subscribed.
There's no I in running things. There's an I in ruining things. It's a fine line.
There is an I in running.
Oh, wait, there is.
In running things, there's two eyes.
I have multiple eyes, 1,000 eyes in one.
Running.
Yeah.
How do you stretch that eye out?
Shea runs things. Stuff. Shea runs stuff.
Stuff.
She's
and
not ruining things.
only stuff. Not
No,
things. Things are
Okay.
fine. The stuff.
Just never mind everything. I'm ruining things. Never mind. I've got too much eye.
Let's give some shout outs to our beard guard, Sean, and then we will say adios for until Monday.
I love my beard guard.
They're wonderful, aren't they?
Lady Suzanne, my hand, Lord Commander George the Golden,
Good questions today, George. Thank you.
Sir Joshua Oakhart, the White Oak, the fabulous Lady Rita of the Copper Mane, the Unbound, Dance the Fervor, a dance that will come to life.
The fervor will be a thing.
Yes.
Yeah, not just an idea.
Sir Joff, Warden of the AC, wielder of Triad, the multifaceted beard of platinum, red, and brown, stay frosty. Sir Tim Corgoyle, Mad Boy of the Western Desert. Queen Helena von Landstein, partying like it's 1999 since 1980-something. A kingdom for a drink.
When the Stay Frosty, I just think of the world's most interesting man. Stay frosty, my friends. It's like the northern version of the world's most interesting man. If the world's most interesting man came from Last Hearth,
It's what Oberon would say as he left Winterfell to go back home.
Stay frosty, my friends. Okay, everyone. Thanks very much. Only 2 episodes left, but the future is still bright for Game of Thrones
We did also
fandom.
get one last super chat.
Oh, we did? All right,
from
then.
Dan Horrocks again. That's all. It was just that.
No question.
No
Well, thank you,
question.
Dan. We appreciate it. And we appreciate everyone who likes and subscribes and spreads the word. Word of mouth is the best way to spread a podcast and YouTube video, especially
We
one of our
need
size.
your mouths.
We need your mouths, the words that come from them.
No, we
Say
need, no,
good
we just
things.
need the mouths.
Just a minute, yeah. And also a shout out to Joe Magician, aka Joe the Gathering, who put out a fantastic video on Jon Snow's arc that I recommend to everyone. It's generating great discussion and is worth your time for sure. So check him out again. He's been on our show before, but he's easy to find on YouTube, Joe Magician. Valar reread us and Valar rewatch us, everyone. Next time.